What's up, y'all? I'm just having my coffee here, getting my day started. Trying to get a conversation going. I've been dipping in between a few other lives that were really interesting, but they just ended spontaneously. So, craving a bit more discussion here, but open to talking really about anything. Hoping I can get someone up on. It's true. It's true. Oh, people will look at you funny if you just substitute Jesus for truth every time. It's Jesus. It's good. Is it because it's good, or is it because it's true? Or it's both? It's Jesus. Jazz is Jesus. Jesus is the jazz. But yeah, I hope you're doing good today, Pi. When you kick me from panel slurms, I just end up here by myself with slow jazz and just no one on the panel. I want you to know that. This is the sad reality I exist in when you kick me from panels. This is your fault. I poured a cup of coffee and it was metaphysically identical to Jesus in action. Oh, I don't know why it's so funny. It's funny because we're picturing like a half zombie man, like, but then it's coffee pouring and it's Jesus. Why is it funny? There's so many components of humor there. It's funny also because people actually use it, I guess, like that. I have a really hard time incorporating Jesus into my life, but I try. Yo, man. Should I turn the music? I usually turn the music off when someone gets up here, but the jazz is so nice, isn't it?
Maybe down a little bit.
It's
But
at 5% right now. As
oh,
low
okay.
as it would go. I
Do
don't
you
know,
have
tell
it
me.
through? Do you have? Are you like playing it through an app right on your phone, and then also on the?
This is actually just through TikTok. Like TikTok has a radio built into it.
Oh, through TikTok. Yeah. Well, yeah, same thing. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
I
always the volume is really weird when you have it like I had to switch when I was doing my lives to like having an external music source because I couldn't control it really well on the app. It's like either like you said, when it's at 5%, it still sounds so loud.
Yeah, and then another song will come on, you can't even hear it. When you say
Yeah,
external source though, do you just have like speakers in your workspace type thing?
yeah.
Ah, I see. I
Just
see.
something like that.
Yeah,
The,
no
the
doubt. I was also trying to just Spotify like through my headphones right now. If I turn on Spotify, I'm pretty sure it comes through as well through TikTok, but again, weird to control.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's what I used to use was Spotify. And then when I would like replay and like listen to my lives to like repost them, it was like so loud. I was like, holy crap! It's like really loud.
Totally. I want to show you this because you have some appreciation for art. These are stickers I'm working on. I literally just made these yesterday. These are for a video I'm doing. But yeah, it's
Oh,
the Vancouver Canucks logo like redesigned into the video title.
oh yeah, I can see it now. It took me a second to read it, but I see it now. Okay.
Uh, um, these I don't know if you've ever heard of this machine. This is a Cricut machine.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah.
These, yeah, basically allows me to like cut these out, like all the details of all the cuts and everything. This has been an experiment, man, to try to figure this out. Such a learning curve. It's really, I got to give props to my girlfriend. She's the one who has all the tech and stuff. But
Does
yeah,
it
I'm so
come?
proud of this.
Yeah. Does the machine come with its own like software that allows you to determine those cuts or what?
Yeah, basically, there's like an edge and a bleeding edge that you
Right.
determine, and yeah, how accurate you want it to be. And
Yeah.
yeah. there was like 10 of these on the page and it cut out each one. It's pretty high tech. It works in relation with the printer. So the way that the once the printer does its thing, it basically talks to the cutting machine and yeah,
It,
determines the
look,
edges.
it looks pretty good. It looks pretty
Thanks, man.
articulate. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm stoked on it. Also, just like experimenting with different qualities of stickers. Like I put these on my bike, right? And usually stickers just like in the rain or something, they'll just disintegrate.
Did they give you like a because I know like when you have really like that one wasn't too bad, but I've seen some really like articulated like sort of like complex die cut stickers, and when you go to like peel it, it's kind of it can be like odd to go to peel it. Did they give you any sort of like did they give you any sort of like indicator as to like where to start like the peel to take off the backing? Because I know that can be like awkward sometimes.
Yeah, and like not really. That's like a trial and error thing kind of
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first time I tried the sticker, I didn't put the black border. Like it has a small black edge all around the sticker, so some of the details were just very flimsy and like non-structured, so the edges were too close basically. And adding that extra edge gave it the sticker a little more body, a little more support. That was all trial and error though. Just had to kind of like figure it out.
It's really cool to have stuff like that, like to be able to do your own DIY because it's like the upfront cost is a lot or whatever, but then once you get going, you save just so much money. Once you get like, if you get a couple, if you're like someone that just like makes anything, whether it be t-shirts or yeah, stickers, like what, printing labels, whatever it may be, like when you get like the actual equipment to do it yourself, it's like the upfront cost is there, but then once you get going in the long run, you save just so much money.
Totally. Well, it's a viable business. I mean, these
Yeah.
t-shirt companies that get set up and get going, they become the t-shirt company, right? The local
Yeah,
like
yeah.
printing. It's a total viable business, bro. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's cool.
Absolutely. For me, it's more of a I guess yeah, it's trippy. Like my girlfriend and I balance like she doesn't really want to be making stickers or like printing. She's more of a designer, but when she gets commissioned to do a bunch, she'll do it, you know. But it is a balance. It's like getting efficient. Like if someone gave her an order of 1,000 sheets, she'd probably have to say no, you know, because there's just like an order flow. Like if she did 100, 200 sheets, that's possible. It's still like a full day of work though, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. Like at a certain point might be worth it just to get some bigger company to do it, but it's all depends on the quantities, depends on what you want to accomplish. And for me it's just a fun, I guess, little like skill to learn. I'm doing it's for a video, like we're making a BMX video, so it'll be cool to hand out stickers and stuff at the premiere, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So your girlfriend's like a designer.
Yeah, she's worked from home for the last like 6, 7 years now, doing her designing business, mostly through Etsy, but she'll get her own clients, and it's been a slow but sure growth, man. It's been really impressive to watch it, honestly, from drawing on a pad to now having all these machines that can print and cut, and she got a new laptop yesterday. It's pretty cool to watch her business grow.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mhm. But it's she mainly focuses on like journals. Like she makes bullet journals. But so like the stickers and stuff is more an addition to what she's already kind of doing. It's not like her main focus. But yeah. Um, the biggest thing was like I was surprised at how hard it is to find like good sticker paper. Like if you just order paper, like these ones we had to laminate, so we had to get 2 sheets of different kind of material, laminate them together, and then cut it out to make sure that it's like quality. You know, like there's so many different types of sticker sheets and vinyls and all that. Again, trial and error. But yeah, what are you up to today, Pi? What are you saying?
Stuff was funny. I actually got a long time ago. I had a conversation with someone else. Actually, I think it was like it might have been Wit. Yeah, I might have been Wit a long time ago because she was using the language like "truth is Jesus" or whatever. And then I eventually got her to like to the point where like we understood that what she meant by that was things are made true by virtue of Jesus. I'm like, oh, okay, well that makes a lot more sense.
Right. Yeah, like there was a part there where P Mars went to a something about what makes a proposition true, like Jesus is somehow in the like premises or something.
Yeah,
That was funny.
yeah,
But I
like
guess that could be like I am then it did get me thinking deeply about that. I mean like I suppose a spirit could inhabit the words or something. Like if you really want to take the argument that far, you right? I don't know.
yeah, yeah. The problem is just like when they were asking about like the actual I like identity. Like if you're saying it's like
Right.
identical to it, it's
The
like what does that?
is.
It's like what does that even mean? Like that's why I was joking about the cup of coffee. It's like when that says like true that I pour a cup of coffee, and then if that's like identical to Jesus,
Yes.
that means that like metaphysically I'm like handling Jesus as I'm like it just doesn't even make any sense. It's like,
Well, it's
but
really funny to picture. It's really
yeah,
funny. I'm picturing like, yeah, mini zombie Jesus just like
yeah,
being poured into my coffee.
yeah, like or any action, like anytime you do anything true, that's identical to Jesus. Like, what does that mean? Like, but I even though I don't, even though I don't like believe the stuff, I it does make sense to say that. Like, I think what he wants to say is just that it's like anything that's like instantiated like by Jesus, like it's true if it's like if it like correlates to how Jesus
Yeah,
instance.
I
Yeah,
gotta be honest. I gotta be honest. I consider myself a Christian, but the whole Jesus thing's very hard to incorporate into the lexicon. I really do not understand how that like synchronizes with the word truth, etc. I look at him as like a historical figure, I suppose, and like how he's related, I don't really entirely know, right? But yeah, when it starts getting wrapped up in the truth, I don't like you what you're the point you're trying to make there. I personally like I don't get it. Like what how could it be? Because obviously before Jesus even existed, there would have been like true things happening. So I don't understand.
oh yeah, well yeah, then yeah, you get into like pre-incarnation versus or if he was always. Yeah, that's true. Like I mean, this would apply to like Jesus being identical to God or whatever, like I don't know.
Right. So like maybe somehow like our ability to grasp the truth relies on his like permission or something like that. But
Yeah,
still, I
yeah,
get
or
lost. I still get lost.
how he instantiates like metaphysical grounding or something. I think is like what you know maybe they would say it was someone like P Mars, not all they, but like
I do think that if the like if I just take at very face value the story I understand of Jesus, if that actually happened, like a man who was let's just assume really good in all ways was like horribly tortured and crucified in front of the masses, I do think that may have had psychological implications thousands of years later. Like maybe humanity did witness something outrageously inhumane uh, during his death or something like that. That's kind of how I digest the story.
yeah, I can see that. I mean, that's no different than like any other like like look at any other like tide turning civil rights figure or something that then
Exactly.
yeah that then completely shifts how we view uh like moral justice.
Everything, I suppose. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, more moral justice, like whatever. Yeah, I know that's why I stopped for a second because I was like everything really. Like,
yeah, it could
yeah,
be.
like
Even
yes,
the Hunchback of Notre Dame story kind of comes into mind, but the brutality there almost isn't enough because of his. Well, I don't want to use the word grotesqueness, but there's something with that story that involves the grotesque nature of humanity, whereas the Christ narrative seems to put up his perfection or his idealism, right? Like Hunchback is a hunchback, whereas Christ is supposed to be this like idealistic person, this prophet, etc. So like the consequences of being brutal to that character figure apparently has deeper implications than something like Quasimodo, but maybe not. I don't know.
hmm yeah. I mean, I don't like it when people like. I think it's like ridiculous to like write like even if you don't believe this, I think it's like ridiculous to like write off the impact, and it seems like some people are like real quick to write off the impact, like, oh, it's of no consequence. It's like, it's very much of consequence that something, um and this isn't, but this just wouldn't be true of just Jesus. It was like, it's going to be true of Muhammad. It's going to be true of like,
Yes, just an
yeah,
appreciation for history
yeah,
in
yeah, and
general.
appreciation.
Yes.
Yeah, to like write it off is just ridiculous. It's like, oh, it has like no impact. It's like, well, that's easy for you to say, like from your perspective of like how you're operating like your own like locality, but like in the
Yeah,
bigger
like
picture,
I can't go to Spain and look at the La Sagrada massive cathedral and not have an appreciation for like the architecture, the history, the art, all that is so fascinating. To discard it would be an absolute diseducation, I think.
I really want to see. I've always wanted to see the. I forget the name of it, but the was it in Brazil? The was it Christ the Redeemer? The huge,
It's a sculpture of Christ, right?
yeah, the huge stone skull. Yeah, I've always wanted to see that. It looks like
See, like you don't need to be on a
fucking awesome.
pilgrimage, a Christian pilgrimage to really appreciate that kind of art and
Oh
history.
no.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Oh no,
You're an
religious.
artist, so
Yeah, yeah. I'm doing a piece right now where I'm doing a piece right now where I'm looking at ideas. Dang it, I keep. Wait, there we go. Yeah, I've been looking at religious, like, sort of like, uh,
iconography.
yeah, yeah, but specifically like specific stuff like uh, illuminated manuscripts and stuff like
Ooh,
that.
cool, cool.
Yeah, just because like the like the reverence that was conveyed in the aesthetics is just really cool. Like, really,
Yes, the
yeah,
symbology, the aesthetics. Absolutely, man.
yeah.
Are you familiar with the name Jonathan Pajot?
I'd have to see it. How do you spell out the last name?
Pag, I believe EAU. Pajot. Jonathan Pajot. He's a Christian artist, but he does art, like sculptures, relief art. But
Oh, okay, yeah. I've seen
he has so many cool lectures on just like symbology, meaning behind art, aesthetics. He does link it somewhat to Christianity, but outside of that, just I appreciate it as an artist. There is a lot of stuff in there. I think you could, pull from or whatever. He's got a lot of interesting takes on art because he doesn't seem like an artist really, but then when you look at his art, it's great.
Oh, he does like, okay, I see it. He does like shallow relief stuff. Okay.
Right, and like yeah, I cringe at the like connection sometimes, the religiosity, but just appreciating the art. You got to separate the art from the artist sometimes, you know. Like I can
Oh no,
appreciate the artist.
I dig that shit. Like, I think it's cool. Like even if I don't subscribe to the belief system, like the art is cool as hell. It's like,
Yeah, like so good, so cool. It's such appreciation for like anatomy or yeah, a lot of different things, right? Like even the history for me, Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel, how he portrayed God as a human figure, that changed that right there. That's kind of like a narrative too that changed history. Like he personified God in the Sistine Chapel, and that was like he was going against the monarchy at the time, right? Like it was a very controversial thing whether he should paint God as a person or as a man, and he went forward with it, and that's still on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. That's amazing history connected to art.
yeah, like if you're like, well, I mean, it's not just. I was gonna say, like, in relation to being a drafts person, like being like someone that draws, but it's not just drawing, but like through my lens, because I mostly draw. You you trace a lot of how people like quote unquote learned, and by learned I just mean like sort of like almost like scientific perspective laws and stuff. You have to trace that a lot through religious art. Like, you can see the evolution of how they conveyed
Of, of,
perspective.
of
Yeah,
science and of realism
yeah,
through art.
Yeah, hmm and
Yes.
a lot of that was religious. If you took religious art out of
Oh,
it, you wouldn't have anything, to be honest. Like,
dude, that connection for me is so fascinating. This
yeah,
strive for reality, what is realism, what is true, whether it's through
yeah.
the medium of art and how that impacted science. Like this anatomy approach from Michelangelo had medical implications. He had more understanding of modern anatomy than most physicians at that time, just
You
through
could
drawing the body.
you could see like in like around like probably like the 1200s and like 13 4 probably 1200s up to like 1500s, just things like, say, like the face angle was at a 3/4 turn, but like the features on the face would still be at like a front profile. Just
Yes.
like,
Yes,
just,
because
yeah,
they didn't have that technology, if you want to even call it that, yet to
yeah.
understand like three-dimensional perspective.
They didn't understand the rules, like
Yes.
how to implement the rules to like convey it on a piece of paper.
So are you saying that as an artist, your education is somewhat tethered to this history? Like if you don't really see how the tech or techniques, I suppose, are evolving along with the times, you don't have a full appreciation for the methods, right? Like it impacts your art to know these things.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that like there's like you can definitely like learn. Well, even people that are self-taught are usually copying something. They're looking at something. They're not doing it like even if you're self-taught, like you're not like just doing it out of nowhere. Like when I talk to autodidacts that like learn how to draw, they say they like watched videos or looked at books or like, blah blah blah. But like just knowing about it, knowing that people tackled the same problems prior to you can cut out a lot of like legwork that you would exhaustively try to do on your own, you know? Like,
Yes,
so being
absolutely.
aware of it, of the people that solved problems. Um,
See, this is a contentious thing because like art, you can easily slide down the slippery slope of thinking my art with all its mistakes is still good. Even in fact, my mistakes are an artistic flair and you excuse your ignorance. But art, even though people like to think there's some sort of like subjective quality to it, there does also seem to be this objective aesthetic that you cannot disregard if you
yeah.
don't, right? Like you can't disregard the techniques or the measures necessary. If you do, you're just ignorant, and the proof's kind of in the pudding. Your mistakes no longer are a flair; they become a testament to your ignorance.
Well, it comes in relation to like your parameters. So the objective, like, there's no like choosing to like make an abstract portrait or like something non-representational versus choosing to do something representational. There's no objective there, right? But there is an objective once you make that choice. Like once you make the choice of conveying something representational, then you open yourself up to objective parameters because it's going to be based off like it's going to be mimetic to nature, right? Like there's going to be
Yes, right.
it's going to be miming nature. So you're going to have to like incorporate the physical laws of the universe into 2D space, like if you're drawing or um, yeah, yeah,
It's like as an artist, as an inexperienced juvenile artist, my temptation is I start with some idea. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not going for a complete realist portrait, but I'm still trying to do a good portrait kind of esque, right? Even maybe if it's a cartoon portrait. And I start, and then I kind of make some mistakes, and I'm just impatient. So I finish the piece and I call it done and convince myself, oh, those mistakes are just part of the flair. You see how that like that's my temptation as a lazy art. Somehow what a good artist does is they're not satisfied until they solve the problem. Like when that face you have the head turned at 3/4 and the facial features aren't, you don't see that as like oh just iconography. Like I almost see those early dogmatic, icons as in a weird way like a testament to the ignorance of the artist, right? They're portraying this as like high art. Meanwhile, they don't even know how to get the face straight on the body, but they didn't have the intellect to like dive deeper. It's a historical notion, but it's interesting how it's tied to dogma, right? Like they might have like poo-pooed someone who pointed out that very issue, like, hey, you could correct the features on the face. and they just scoff
Yeah.
it off in their like dogmatic ignorance, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you see what I'm saying there. It's
No,
yeah.
no, 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 no. And what's interesting is that when it and then when it like got out of real then like this is a little tangential, but it's like when it got out of realism, it's actually interesting to see when they were like well, so let me cycle back. So at the beginning, it's like there was like you see an urge to get towards realism. So the misrepresentation is due to lack of like technical limitations. Um, and then they get there, and then they start abstracting it again, right? And then is that
Intentionally,
yeah,
intentionally.
intentionally, and then in that time in art history, it's actually really cool to see how much of a shit stir it is. Like religious people like didn't want them to do that. Not just religious people, but just anyone that was just like wanted to like had some sort of like preservational mindset about like society and art and culture and stuff. Like um,
Well,
just
that's where this whole thing of like postmodernism extends beyond art and goes into our education, our medicine. Does these implications towards sort of abstractions in art being just as well valuable, if you want to put it on that way, as realism? Does that mean culturally this is that same appreciation for like abstraction is going to extend into things like science and philosophy, sort of? That's where I think these postmodern implications come from. It's like actually that's where I'm like I start to I don't know if you hear what I'm saying there, but it's like if we stray away from realism, which I love abstract art, but is that if after we've already appreciated the techniques involved with realism, if we're now like rejecting them in a way, right, to pursue something else, does that
what?
have further implications throughout culture, basically?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like even like non-representational stuff, like abstraction, to some degree, still like you still need to understand sort of like certain mimetic principles. Like you still need to understand perspective and depth and all that, even in abstraction, right? Like
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
like if you yeah, if you want like foreground, midground, background, like diminishing perspective, things like that, even if it's non-representational, you're still using the same rules. So if you don't know like those rules of how to like achieve those types of things, then even your abstraction is gonna like fail in respect.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
No,
if you
even
wanted to achieve those things, you
well,
know.
even to your point, perhaps the abstract realm would be a better way to represent those principles, right? If you
Yeah, I mean,
if
some people think so. Yeah.
right, you could take a principle of like shadowing or shading or color theory or something probably to a further depth with abstract art than you could in realism. Perhaps, I don't know, that's a huge statement, but just like yeah.
What's up, Marcus?
How you doing? I was just walking in my car. It's really windy. I didn't want to blow up your mics. Hey,
Appreciate that.
Logic Troll, I had a conversation with you last night. You remember?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it was good conversation. So what's the topic today?
Oh, I'm always, free balling it. You can talk about really whatever. Pai Chi and we're having a good discussion just sort of about art and history right now. Pai Chi's an amazing artist. You should check out his page if you haven't. But
Yeah, I'll do
yeah, we
that
always kind
now.
of get into it about art.
How can I research him? Do I just press on
He's
his
he's he, yeah yeah press. He's the guy above you, but yeah, press on him and then press on his little icon once the bottom part pops up. Another window
Yeah,
will
yeah,
pop up, and then you can press on his profile picture again, and I think that should take you to his account.
I dropped him a follow. I'm gonna have a look at his work.
He does, dude. He does
Later today.
trade. Do you know what Etch and Sketch are? You know what Etch and Sketch is?
Yeah. I know those.
He does mini Etch and Sketch, like crazy pieces on the Etch and Sketch, permanent, and then makes them permanent.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's sick.
I want to get back into like drawing because I was never very good at it, but I'd like to be able to like draw whatever I can visualize.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I wish I was better at it. Yeah, do you ever just go back to the like pen and paper, Paichi? Are you on like an iPad now? When you do most of your art?
Oh no, like anything that's not Etch a Sketch is usually analog. I draw with pen a lot. I color digitally, but I most of my line work is going to be done analog. It's going to be done
Cool, cool.
usually ink. I paint a little bit, not much. I'm more of a I like dry mediums, like technical pens and stuff like that.
Cool, very cool. Have you messed around at all with like Procreate and like drawing on an iPad, that kind of thing?
No, I never Procreate. I've mostly just used Photoshop for coloring and
Right,
stuff.
right, for coloring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys
That's
know of Garth Dawkins?
of course. We
Yeah,
both do. Yeah.
I tried to have a conversation with him today, and I
How'd that
disagreed
go?
with him, and then he kicked me. So I disagreed with him on a definition basis. His definition of deistic and theistic were like completely wrong. So I told him that, and then he kicked me. So I'm like, if you're not going to use the words that mean the concepts, then what are you doing? I don't think he's very easy to have a conversation with because he doesn't answer the question.
Pi, what's your advice for this young whippersnapper at Darth?
Stay away.
Yeah, but like he has some interesting concepts that I like to discuss with him, but he's incapable of having a decent conversation. He's like,
He forces the dialectic to his own idiosyncratic notions, and then if you deviate from it, he then accuses you of like invoking, ambiguous verbiage and blah blah blah. Like he forces it into his rules.
he's got a script.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'd like
he's
to learn what
he's got a
concepts
strategy for sure.
because he's definitely
And then he projects like
metaphysician.
yeah, I mean he knows some stuff, but it's just like even
But
I've
like the
seen him
concept
with
of
like pretty famous. I've like he's had a few exchanges over the years with like pretty well known like contemporary philosophers, and even in those situations, the dialogue gets nowhere.
He runs the same script. Yeah, he runs the
Yeah,
same
because
script.
he will not let them use their own language. He refuses to. Like he refuses to let you explain things the way you would explain things given your lexicon. Like he refuses to let it happen like that. And then they'll just like, well, I don't know what you mean there. And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And he goes right back into his script. And then it just gets nowhere. His conversations never go anywhere because he wants you to frame everything through his framework. And if you don't, you're wrong. So that's it.
Yeah, or you're being belligerent,
Or you're being belligerent,
or
or
you're
you're
dodging.
whilst him calling you a fucktard,
Yeah.
Stop being belligerent, you fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just really want to get to the meat of his like argument, like the idea of an ultimate being.
If you wanted to read the tag argument, like one of the bigger references is Van Til. Van Til is the one who wrote, and it does actually his writing about the tag argument. There is a lot of methodological stuff in there about exactly what you're talking about like sticking to strict tactics, utilizing methods of against your opponent, those kinds of things. Van Til writes about those things specifically.
So it's like it's not conducive to a worthy discussion. It's just waste of time. Hello?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, bro.
You guys cut out for a minute.
No, from my view, it's kind of a waste of time. If you could get him to like, I feel like the only way to probably ever get him to a point where you can like have a dialogue would be to like concede to a bunch of points to soften him up. But that's like rhetorically kind of dishonest. So it's like, if you don't want to do that, it's like,
yeah, it's just like I struggle with the internet because nobody, if they were talking to me in person, would speak to me the way they speak to me on the internet. I'm like a huge dude. I'm 6'6". I'm like 200 pounds. I'm pretty skinny, but like I'm a big guy. And like, like these people just don't speak how they should speak. They should be more respectful.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the one thing I will say about Darth is he's like 63 or 64 years old. And so he does hold it down. I always say this. He does hold it down for that generation. Holding the TikTok live every day and debating people is such a new generation thing. For him to be doing it and doing it for over a decade, like I give the man props where it is. He's a resilient guy when it comes to online stuff.
Yeah, I think he's really intelligent in respect to like specifically like if you listen to him long enough, like his rote skills, like his memorization skills, like his rote memory to just remember like static facts and stuff. He's really
His
like it's
his tech, dude. He's for 63 or whatever.
yeah,
He's tech. He knows a
yeah.
decent amount about tech.
It's sharp, man. Like he's sharp in respect to these like rote facts, but I just think he's not like
There's several different facets to intelligence, and I think that he holds one of them, which is like being able to memorize and have conversations in a worthy way. But like at the same time, you also need to have logic, and
Yeah.
he lacks that completely. And he
Yeah,
based
yeah.
all
Yeah,
of his ideas off of like faulty logic that a 3-year-old could like.
Yeah.
If you described epigenetics or not epigenetics, epistemic philosophy to like a middle schooler, and you got them to know all the terminology that he uses, they would just destroy him in a debate. It's like that's not what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm a bit butthurt because he's just a bit of a dick.
It's funny too because if you listen to him, he's like, oh, like he conveys this narrative that he's been worn down like over the years. But I've been listening to him for a long, long time, like way before he was on TikTok. I've been listening to him for about as long as he's been on the internet, and he was just as belligerent when he started.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Some people, but like, what were you saying that like his argument was the tag argument? Should I research that if I want to learn more about
For
it?
sure. Yeah, for sure. Transcendental argument for God. Van Til is like the disingenuous, philosopher who popularized this. The modern philosopher, I would say, would be William Lane Craig, but he doesn't really run tag. He runs the Kalam, but I mean, Darth would reference him as well. But he has tons of references. Joshua Pillows is another modern one he references. So yeah, you could read his references if you have difficulty dialoguing with him. What I'm interested in whenever I talk with him is like leading him down roads that most people don't really question. So I'll grant him his position on like what's the foundation of logic, what grounds logic, that we need God. I'll grant him all that, and then I'll take him on like a question like, do you think the Bible has implications towards like capitalism or socialism, or do you, or like maybe the art conversation we were having earlier, Pi? I'd be interested probing his like, does he have any opinions on aesthetics and art? Does he think aesthetics and art are objective? Those kinds of questions, because not enough people like get him outside of his comfort zone,
Yeah, and I want to press him on the like Christian worldview. Like, why is it that God can exist, but it has to be the Christian God?
Yeah,
he never answers that.
He's gonna. Well, he does. He's gonna. It's all gonna be through the lens of tag, like Logic Troll was saying. It's gonna be through a transcendental argument. He's gonna say that like only the Christian God possesses the necessary attributes to ground, a variety of transcendentals, whether it be, and then he's going to include, whatever set of things into transcendentals: logic, intelligibility, knowledge, value theory, like all that.
Yeah, I just want to like know why it has to be Yahweh.
Okay, so this cycle of like wanting to know the justification for his first premise is the presuppositional dilemma in tag that everyone struggles with. Like he's putting forward a presupposition. It's called presuppositional. Like he's making a presuppositional argument. So
right.
he's not really willing to justify that first premise. The thing you're looking for, he's never going to give you.
Right. So the transcendental form is like X is the necessary precondition for Y, such that if Y is X, it necessarily is. But he's saying like to even form that, you have to like have that. So he's not going to go into it. He's just going to want he always ever going to ask for is like for you to give your worldview, and he's going to say like the contrary is impossible. He's not going to get into. I mean, yeah, you're right, Roger.
Yep, he's going to flip it on you. he'll flip it on you, Marcus, and he will say, "What, How do you ground the fact that you can interpret things in a non-God world?
And I was like,
You're
the
Yeah,
you're
exact
there
same
would
thing
be
claiming."
like
without God.
my bad, but in a non-God world, there would be a problem of induction that would incur.
How
Like you
so?
wouldn't be able to epistemically justify anything.
Which God?
No, in a non-God world, in a
Yeah,
world
I believe
But
in
he's
God.
saying
I believe in
which
a
God?
ultimate force, but I don't believe in Yahweh.
So I mean, what's your like epistemic justification for
Well,
the God you believe in?
well, I haven't thought about it that much, but like
Mm.
it wouldn't track that it wouldn't exist because it doesn't
Well,
make sense that it wouldn't
what's
exist.
your argument?
What do you mean?
Like, so when you say like you believe in a God that is not the Christian God,
Yeah,
and you have knowledge of the God, and that God is
I
not
didn't
the
say I have
Christian
knowledge
God,
of it.
well then how do you know that the God is not the Christian God?
Well, I'm not a deist. I believe in theism, but it's like
Yeah, so you believe in a God, but so
I
you're
believe in
saying
a
you're
force.
agnostic,
You need to
right?
you're defining God the wrong way. You're defining it like a character in a book. It's like God is in my mind, God is a force. It's an imposing force.
Okay, so you do have knowledge of this force that you refer to, right?
Yeah.
So how did you come to this knowledge?
Well, I read it in a book and then I verified it through personal experience.
So what book did you read it from?
The Kabbalion.
What's that?
It's a book on Hermetic philosophy. It goes into the existence of the all and
so
attributes.
where did that book come from?
It came from the three initiates. Three gentlemen took the teachings from Hermetic philosophy and culminated them into a simplified version.
Right. So where did Hermetic philosophy originate?
Ancient Egypt.
Oh, okay. So it was okay. So would you say like this Hermetic philosophy? Would you say it's the knowledge that comes from God, or is it knowledge from men about God?
Well, I mean, like, how would it come from something that doesn't give?
Okay, so it doesn't come from God, but it's knowledge of God. Then with the knowledge that they possess of like let's say the knowledge of the force that you referred to
Yeah.
via Hermetic philosophy.
Yeah.
So would this be via the observations that they make?
It would be via the observations I make. I wouldn't believe in it if I hadn't experienced it.
Yeah, so it would be like via the observations that they make with their five senses, and this
Yeah.
is how they're able to make like this is how they're able to attain this knowledge of God that they call Hermetic philosophy. Would I be correct? Yeah, there's a problem of induction here.
Yeah, I understand the problem of induction. I just don't get how fully, I guess, you're gonna now deduce God.
Yeah, I mean, so if this knowledge is attained from any observations that they make.
Yeah, I get
No
the
way
problem of
that-
induction. No, I
Yeah.
totally get the problem of induction. But now, how do we deduce God?
When you say deduce God, that's very like ambiguous. What do you mean?
Well, apparently we have a problem of induction. So let's leave induction. Let's stick strictly to deduction. That's where I'm hoping you're gonna go with that. And like the first claim you made was that we need some justification, right, for our principle of reasoning or logic or something like that. So deductively, we're gonna try to get to God, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that would be like by the logical necessity of God. So like there's a few couple of arguments, and you guys were speaking on a couple of arguments that pose like the logical necessity of God. So that's how we would be
Right.
deductively able to know like
That's
there
the
is a
problem
God.
I'm having here. They're not quite deductions, they're just presuppositions.
Well, I mean, everything is a presupposition. We believe that the deductions that we make is grounded in a presupposition that doesn't need any justification.
Right.
And
I
we
get.
would deductively pose justifications as to why that presupposition doesn't need justification. So
We
when you
might
say that,
agree.
wait,
Depending on your definition of God.
yeah, let me finish real
Definition of,
quick.
go for it.
Yeah, so like when you say that the unjustified presupposition is or when you say that the unjustified proposition is a presupposition, well, I mean, we hold on to the stance that this proposition X does not need justification in order for it to be justified.
Yeah, that's what a presupposition is. I got that. I get that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be a presupposition. It would just be a proposition that doesn't need justification. It would just be an axiom that's grounded, or that is the grounding for everything else within reality.
I have two questions. One, how do you define God? And two, what's the difference between different presuppositions? If you're presuppositioning your senses versus you're presuppositioning that God gave you your senses and revealed himself to you using those senses.
Yeah, I mean, one would be like in your presuppositions, there's a problem. There's a problem of induction that occurs, and in the presuppositions or in the propositions that I assert, there is no problem of induction that occurs.
Why not?
Induction
Because it
is
wouldn't need
induction
justification.
is defined by your observation. So anything tethered to an inference, related to your observations, your senses, is going to be by definition inductive.
I would want to know how God solves induction there. What does he?
Me too.
He
Me
just
too.
he loves you enough to keep it uniform.
Then we would just pose this is where we would get into deduction, right? We just give our argument for the
No, back
logical
to induction. How does God solve the problem of induction? How do you know God's going to keep things uniform? Just
when you say
faith?
when you say how do you I need you to clarify.
Well, the problem
Well,
of
use
induction,
it more
right, is that
specific.
you're using the problem of induction is that you're justifying the future based off of uniform principles in the past, right? How is God solving that? Just like you believing that he's going to keep it all legit?
Well, I mean, I don't think that's the problem of induction that occurs.
That is the problem of induction. That's
The
precisely what the
problem of induction that occurs is that there wouldn't be any there wouldn't be any epistemic justification for God. That would
Right,
be the problem of induction. What you're posing would be different from what I'm
God?
saying. What's up?
No, the problem of induction.
Yeah, I lost you there with the God.
Yeah, what do you think the problem of induction is? You can tell me. Because if you're referring to something else, I don't care that it's the problem of induction. We can tackle what any issue you think there is.
Yeah, the problem of induction, it just boils down into epistemic justification, how we know knowledge, and how do we know if our knowledge
based off of lacking a uniformitarian principle. That's what the problem of induction is referring to. That's what it's about.
I mean, I'm not too familiar with that.
Yeah. Okay.
You're close to getting there with what you said about your senses, right? But what are right? If we can't use our senses to make a unified inference, that's why Pi's using that language. It's then we are searching for this unification outside of induction, right?
Right. So you mean pragmatic justification?
Not quite. He's just making the same claim as you. He's just extending the language, right, beyond sensor. So if we can't use our senses to make inductive observations and remain non-tentative, right, then we're trying to get to some unified principle that does do it.
Yeah,
that's what the problem of induction is searching for. The problem of induction is looking for outside of our senses. We can't rely on our senses, like our smell, our touch, our taste. We can't rely on what we see completely. So what can we rely on? We're looking for this unified principle outside of our senses, right? To ground induction or ground the problem of induction, if you want to put it that way.
I mean, as Christians, we rely on the logos. We just rely on the word of God.
And I just don't see how that solves induction. You rely on this notion that God is going to be uniform. Well, I'm using probabilistic assessments and getting predictive power. So I have to assume some sort of uniform principles in nature. I don't see what the difference is.
I guess the biggest difference would be that you would have to give me a justification for why your actions would be unjustified.
Well, no one can justify their axioms. Everything is a presupposition when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it. I'm presupposing that my senses work, and every piece of information that I've encountered is adequately.
Okay. I'm so glad I'm hosting the live right now, because this is where I get to take it off the train tracks a little bit here, and I love that pie cheese up here, because I'm gonna say something completely crazy, but nonetheless pick your brain, because it was related to what we were talking about earlier with these techniques of realism in art, and that is, do you think that axioms, in the sense of, linguistic propositions sort of grounding our assumptions to lead us to further conclusions, do you think that's related in any way to aesthetics, like geometry or like the Cartesian grid, or somehow like these logical systems are not just only verbal or linguistic, but also somehow possibly geometric and related to aesthetics? Do you hear at all what I'm saying there, Pai Chi?
Sort of. I'd have to we'd have to have this, I'd have to think more about it from this lens. I've never really thought about it in that way, so I'm not sure.
It's hard for me to detach axiom from axes. I see these two things as related, especially in logic, but I know that's I don't know, I get picked apart for having that opinion. But they seem related, right? I don't know if we're going to juxtapose axioms so that in we can be linear in any way reasoning about them. All these terms seem geometric or aesthetic in somewhat.
It's possible. I've never given it much thought, but that's an interesting concept to explore.
No, I see what you wrote there. God affirms we can rely on our senses. But without knowing, without having 100% epistemic certainty, am I not just using an induction?
Oh yeah, no, there's no way you can use God to justify that you rely on your senses. No.
To affirm that God affirms, is to just get right back to induction. I mean, you could say it's
worse, because you're not levying the problem of induction. You're trudging forward, assuming your inductive claims are true.
Then the move could be.
I just want to know, the way in God which install us with this knowledge wouldn't be through. It wouldn't be through indirect, it wouldn't be through an indirect sense. It would be in a direct sense.
I mean, then I'm gonna want to see the homework. I'm gonna want to see demonstration of are you getting at? I don't want to straw man you. Are you getting at revelatory epistemology?
Thank you. That was the word I was going to use. Yeah.
Is that
Hey, gentlemen, I'm going to jump off real quick. I got to hit the books, but thank you for the conversation.
Marcus, you're welcome anytime, dog. You have a wonderful day.
Be well.
God bless you. But yeah, I mean, I would say I would take the stance that the Catholics take, I guess. I would say this is something that's added within my nature.
Yeah, I'm not sure right there. I thought maybe you were saying we need some sort of direct revelation, revelatory epistemology. I thought maybe that's what you were getting at. But I don't know. If it goes down, because that's usually the route that people will go down with arguing tag. I know the one that knows, and he's revealed it to me such that I know for certain. But in those cases, I want to see the homework. I want to see that the revelation is consistent and it's yielding predictive power, and people aren't having inconsistent, incongruent revelations. And
well, I mean, yeah. I'm not too familiar with that, but anything that contradicts the original revelation would just be a false revelation. But I mean, when it comes to in the direct way in which we receive these, it would be via via participation in the divine energies of God. So these things would be added on to our nature through participation in his energies. That's the stance.
I think the word you're looking for is revelation there. Usually the word is revelation. I would say, maybe not, maybe you're trying to distinguish what you're, but isn't that that's revelation, I think.
I would say it's a bit I would say it's a bit more than just revelation. It depends on how you define revelation.
Well, I thought that what you just how you just defined it. I've never tried to define it really, but how you just described it would be a fine enough definition for me. Somehow getting this transmission of energy from directly from God, not related to your senses, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've heard different. I was reading a bit about it recently. There's different takes on it, and then there's like general, personal, and special.
He
You
said
know.
participatory in this one, not Bob was referring to participation. I don't know. You could
Okay,
just
so
you
that
can
was
work through a bunch of different ways, but yeah,
yeah. So that would be like personal revelation or something. Because
yeah.
there's like a general RE that states that the world is intelligible, like through God. Like that's like the most general form of RE. It's like self-evident. It's like the only
See, this is where I can just back all the way up to deduction, get rid of God. It seems like I can simplify this argument a lot. Back all the way up, get rid of the term God, and then I just start contemplating rational systems like the grids. If I didn't have a language to talk about anything real, I feel like the grid system would still be a digestible method for like interpreting reality, whether it be data collection or drawing the coastline or really anything related to like depicting symbolically what reality is. And that's where I think we can just remove terminology and semantics and get right to things like geometry. Seems like basic geometry has a lot more to say about reality than our like fluffy terminology.
What do you mean by that? My bad.
No, I'm glad that I mean, I don't really completely know how to get through, I suppose, what I'm saying. I've been trying to say it for a while, but the grid system, like the Cartesian plane, right, removes all semantics. There's no terminology in the grid system. You can add whatever variable term, X or Y, into the system that you want to interpret, and then draw a graph of the data.
So
So,
you're
like,
saying it would be like, in a sense, univocal?
what was the word you said?
Like it would be like univocal?
I don't know what that means.
It just means like,
Univocal?
yeah, it means like one meaning.
yeah. It just means
Absolute
yeah. It
meanings.
just means like consistent, like across the
Okay.
board. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's consistent. It's the most consistent system of interpreting reality outside of our own subjective experiences, unrelated to senses that we have. I don't need God in this equation. I could go to
Yeah,
any,
but
right,
that's because you're interacting with geometry like directly.
right,
Yeah,
totally. But
yeah,
now,
I get that.
I would say though that the geometry is still which I don't know if this argument makes any sense again, but like it does interest me that the geometry is still like a cross or like a juxtaposition of lines. So the symbology of Christianity is still related. Like the
I mean,
origin
it
and the
depends.
center of the graph is a cross.
Do you take a realism position on like math?
It's a deep question. I don't really know. I've thought about it a lot, but I guess I don't know. I would say
Yeah, I
no.
try not to think about
Ultimately,
it.
no. If I had to
Okay,
put my money on it.
then I mean, if you don't take a realist position on math, then math would just boil down to some type of convention.
Yeah, axioms. There's like 5 Peano axioms to math that are sort of like presupposed in order to get to basic arithmetic.
But then it wouldn't be direct in a sense. Also, it would be indirect.
Yeah,
Because although
it is.
yeah. I mean, I guess I would say like we interact with math like in a direct sense.
Well,
Because
we
the
interact with
interaction
math directly,
basically,
but it's like saying we interact with language directly.
yeah, we
Language
do.
is right. But
Yeah, it's in the mind.
so
That's direct.
how we interact with it is the specific thing I'm actually trying to say. There's a method for how we interact with our language. Our language is part of us in a way that it can take control of our thoughts, and we can be a victim of our thoughts and of our language, misinterpreting everyone, not communicating well, etc. Or there are specific methods throughout history that have been like popularized in order to help our psychology with our thinking. And like that would, for me, that method, the main method would be logic and rationality, right? And that seems to boil down to these like axiomatic systems that aren't necessarily linguistic. I mean, we call them languages, but if we remove the semantics, they seem more aesthetic in nature. That's why I love talking to Pai Chi about this, because there might be something more to be said about the aesthetics, I think, of something like logic than the formal nature of it.
Yeah, I think I remember when you very first were like coming on the app, you were talking about that a lot. You were talking about like the XY coordinates and like Descartes and aesthetics and like I'd have to just see. I don't know. I've never quite really understood like where you're coming from, but that's not. I don't mean that in a contentious way. I mean that in a like literally like I'm oblivious to like under like fully grasping what you mean by it. So I don't know. I guess it would just need fleshed out more over time. Like for me
Dude,
to
I appreciate the non-attack approach. Thank you for being so kind to me. And
well,
that's,
when you first went on, I remember. I feel like I wasn't. I feel like I made some jabs at you in the chat about it. But I relinquished that approach.
no, they're probably warranted. I maybe came on a little more aggressive than I should have as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you mean like? I guess I'm. Yeah, I don't. I guess I just don't fully grasp. Like, so
Okay,
you're saying,
this is the easiest way to put it.
yeah.
Everyone has a problem with semantics, right? Semantics to the words. What are the definitions of the words? So let's remove what does math kind of attempt to do? Removes the definitions. Let's just represent the whole premise with P and the whole conclusion with Q, right? And that logical ability to remove, I would view that as deduction, removing semantics, removing variables, removing or assumptions down to the absolute bare bones of the argument. I feel like we could do that all the way down to geometry itself. Like if we didn't have words or symbols at all, we would just have to use something like the grid system to interpret reality accurately. See, like throughout history, humans tried to interpret and draw maps of reality, but they never really functioned, right? As soon as if I drew a map of my local territory, I and maybe my family members would understand it. But the moment I had the map to you, you have no way of interpreting it, right? And the symbology is very local. Yet if I could, right, the grid system somehow decentralizes this methodology of thinking to really anyone, right? It doesn't take any semantical assumptions.
Oh, okay. I kind of see more what you're saying now. Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know what that means. I don't really know.
Yeah,
where
that's
that
what I
takes
was.
us.
That was gonna be my next thing. I was like, I don't know what that means in respect to like aesthetics. I don't.
Okay, there's a few things. Well, first of all, it's just basic symbology of interest to me. That something like, I don't want to call it the cross because that's so related to Christianity, but like, you know what I mean by that? The two intersecting lines, right? That there's something deductive, apparently, in essence, of that symbol. So that interests me because what the grid system is just a pattern of that symbol repeated over and over again, and somehow that achieves a deductive like environment called the Cartesian plane. So that's the first aesthetic principle I guess I noticed. And then the second thing is something demanded of us to be, I guess, like honest or like at least falsifiable or verifiable in nature. So like that seems aesthetic too. Like in order to use the system, you have to be like virtuous, which that seems aesthetic again.
What do you mean by virtuous being aesthetic? That's interesting.
Yeah, I know that was, I guess, a bit of a looser connection, but to call someone good or bad or beautiful or ugly, these things seem aesthetic in nature, and it's weird that our connection to deduction again, or this method of reasoning, again, maybe all the way related down to geometry, also has a relation to our being of goodness, this aesthetic quality of like something not quite inductive. We can't put our senses on it. We can't quite put our finger on what it is, this unifying principle. I'm calling it good or reasonable or like honest, right? But these are words just loosely hinging around the concept of like, right? If you and I are going to use a tape measure, even, there has to be this quality of honesty in the way we use the tape measure. Otherwise, you're going to make false cuts and we're going to waste a bunch of material. And no matter how much we argue, it takes you being a humble person measuring twice before you cut in order to use the tool. No matter how, right? It's not the tape measure's fault that you keep fucking up the cuts, right?
Yeah.
So that's a weird connection. It's like the grid system's only as good as we are. When we talk about the aesthetic quality of the grid system and how well it works in mapping reality, it also relates to us somehow. Like, one of the things I think about is the coastline. Mapping the coastline is so fractal in nature. We could go so detailed, right, into the coastline, or so general. Grid system.
Oh, you're roboting a bit.
Can you hear me now, Pi? You still there?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Was I cutting out?
Yeah, you were roboting quite a bit.
Shit. My bad.
I hear you now, though.
Okay, well, I don't know how much of that you caught, but I can end the rant there, and no pressure to respond unless you have any thoughts.
Oh no, it's interesting. I actually like the guy that was just up too. He was more calm. I like it when people. I find pre-sup actually interesting, but I like it when people are like not that approach is so often in tandem with belligerence. You know, we associate it with like a lot of belligerent people on the app, and I think it's actually an interesting argument when it's not so belligerent.
I agree. No, I totally agree.
Like
I totally agree.
I think like starting back with Kant when he was justifying transcendentals and he's saying, "Oh, like, well, but what is it even that needs to be grounded to even understand the world in a certain way?" I think that's a noble pursuit. Like, I think that's a noble
Dude, I
pursuit.
totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, I just think it needs to be evidential. Like, I don't this crap where you pull this move when Van Til and Bonson, when they took it to where they're like just like threw their arms up and they're like, well, nope, I'm not even going to engage in that because like even if you start to utter any phoneme or morpheme, you're presupposing God. It's like, where can we even get with that? Like,
Well, this is, I suppose, my point of aesthetics. Notice how it degrades into an aesthetic issue.
yeah.
Do you kind of see that as my like when the substance of the argument is so limited, it does become like a strategy tactic, interrupting that it becomes those kinds of things, like, which is an aesthetic issue in the conversation more than substance, like meta or aesthetic. I don't know if you want to link those two terms, but that interests me. It's like, why is it that all of a sudden the grotesque comes out in us when these conversations become so limited? These two things seem connected. A progressive, productive conversation seems linked to a certain method that isn't what you're saying is linked to kind of tag, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if those two things are are obvious or not, or if I'm just like trying to see a pattern that's not there. But like, I think there's something there about how disingenuous or how a conversation could flourish, and like what causes those things. Like, is it just an accident that the tag argument always devolves into seemingly disingenuous attacks? I don't think so.
Oh yeah, yeah. I see. Like, I don't know quite what you're getting at, but I see your train. I see, like, kind of like I'm picking up on the vibe. Like, yeah, why does that particular argument result
Constantly devolve.
result into a certain aesthetic? Yeah, that's
It's totally inevitable too, I think. I don't think there's a way of escaping it. That's
now
the
I know what
interesting
you
part.
mean. Now I
Thank
know.
you.
Now I know
Cool.
what you mean more by aesthetic too.
Cool. Maybe I'm using the
Yeah.
term wrong. Maybe you can
No,
help
no,
me
no,
with
no,
that.
no. Like aesthetic meaning like just like any sort of like vibe or particular emotion that it has, a feel. Like that's what. Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. Because I was thinking, it's like I draw, so when I'm thinking aesthetics, I'm thinking
Visual.
I'm thinking
Visual.
yeah, I tend to think visual, but like and
It
I
is
get
a
stuck,
visual thing too. It's just TikTok's not visual. If
and I
people were
get
on the
stuck, yeah,
screen, you would
and I
see it.
but yeah, aesthetic meaning yeah, it could be an
Dude,
audio.
think of that aesthetic. The aesthetic's hidden, right? What does Darth
Yeah.
do? Never shows his face.
Yeah.
There's this whole mystique about the aesthetic, right? That's a component of the argument. It's totally all wrapped into the full, identity, I'd say.
Yeah, and yeah, aesthetic's going to be the way it's presented in any way. Yeah, like the way Daddy Bear said it.
For you to be robbed of the visuals, ooh, right? What does that mean now? Where's the aesthetic? For you not to consider the aesthetics in a way because the fact you're robbed of the visuals, isn't that achieving? It's similar tactic to the argument of like, right, putting the presupposition right in your face and then sort of hiding behind it and laughing at you for not noticing. It's the same sort of aesthetic. It's interesting because there's other tactics and other methods that are either good or bad that I think have similar or opposite results too. I don't think tag's the only example we can see here. There's a plethora of personalities out there that kind of either resolve into good conversations or bad ones.
Someone had told me I'd have to do more research on it before I speak out of turn, but someone had told me they had read about Van Til like creating this like non-justification tactic as a mere tactic, like he did it nefariously, but I don't know that that's the case.
I could believe it. If not,
Yeah,
that's how that it has been weaponized in a lot of ways, like
yeah,
that kind of.
yeah. That's just something I heard someone say. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'd have to know more. Van Til's not a very good writer. Every time I try to read him, I like, it's like, and then because Bonson cleared up after, like Bonson, was responsible for trying to like clarify Van Til, and then
Okay, I'm not familiar with him.
yeah, the chain kind of goes Van Til. Well, I mean, you could start back with Kant, but like as far as like actual like what like the true instantiation of tag like as it's used by people on the internet, it's like it goes like Van Til and then Bonson. Bonson kind of like wrote and clarified and formalized more of like what Van Til was saying.
Yeah, I've heard that name now that you're saying it come out of Darth's mouth quite a bit. He references Bonson. Yeah,
Greg Bonson.
totally. Frank, you're welcome to join the conversation anytime, dog. How you doing?
What? Hey, how y'all doing? What's the topic on right now, or is it something different?
We're freestyling it, bro. We're freestyling it.
Yeah, I see. I have a question then. Is things like aesthetic beauty in those aspects, would you feel like in some sense could be deeper than logic?
Or the same thing, I suppose. Yeah, maybe
would you
deeper. Yeah,
say?
maybe deeper. Well, like, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Like, okay, the tag arguments tries to ground logic, right? So I'm trying to do that sort of too, but not through God, just through what I would say is like, well, what I would say what grounds it in terms of like us being humans and how we utilize this tool, it would be like things like our empathy. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I think something like our empathy is what grounds our ability to use like something like the tool of rationality and logic. I think that's a pretty reasonable argument to make, actually.
Empathy. I could see empathy not being an equation. So I start off with, okay, what is logic? Our stereotypical definition is something with a rigid structure with like that's been vigorously like identified, scrutinized, tested, something like that, right? It has consistency and it's been oh my god, I'm going blank.
Well,
But you kind of understand
well,
what I'm going with?
would you mind if I would hold to everything you just said, but would you mind if I extended the definition to include something like aesthetics? Because like when you say form, right, the form of the argument, well, that's starting to bleed into like aesthetic language for me, right?
Form of the argument, yeah, because you need a sense of
Structure,
Yeah, it is syntactical. It is like that's,
syntax,
yeah.
syntax, right? Is syntax aesthetic?
In a way, yeah. Syntax
Right.
is aesthetic.
This
Yeah.
is true, and now we're getting to like now. I love that you guys are here with me because I feel very alone in this space. This question. This is where I'm at. It's like what the hell? Everyone seems to be talk about a presupposition or like maybe like what can we flesh out what this mean? What is that? Whoa! Like is it true that syntax? Because if it's aesthetic, does that mean it's like somehow again linked to something like our goodness, our empathy, like those kinds of weird things?
What about just because this was a first thought? Sorry to interrupt. Like maths. When maths is a very like, is there aesthetic in maths? Because I could see it has forms, has consistency, and it's not really art. It's its own thing.
Right. Well, there's a lot of ways to attack this question. Like I talked about earlier, I've kind of been doing my research on the five Peano axioms in math. There's five axioms that allow us to get to basic arithmetic. Very interestingly, the fifth axiom is called induction, which I don't know if I'd label it that, like how I understand induction, but fair enough. I see how it could be linked. But outside of that, I don't know where else to go. I mean, arithmetic could have been designed in another way. There's many modes of arithmetic. You don't have to use, right? There's many ways to bend the language of math. So
That almost seems like the limitation of the human. We almost need aesthetic. We need this artistic form to interact with the world.
Yeah, it's
right.
I'm trying to think if like syntax relies heavily on order, so like inference rules rely heavily on order. You can't mix the orders. You get wrong.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you get wrong answers when you mix the orders.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like right to call that aesthetic.
Okay. So
I don't know if that's right to call that aesthetics.
okay.
Like,
So my
or if
question,
aesthetics is something next order. I don't
my
know.
my question becomes why. So when I love where you brought that. Why then are the inference rules so rigid? So I look at the inference rules and I ask myself, why do these work? Why are these the strict inference rules, right? When I look at the strict rules pertaining to perspective drawings, I can digest the relationship between a horizon line, 2 points on the horizon line, and how that mathematically relates to perspective drawings. But I cannot, right, relate how the syntax is related to this formal structure that realizes reality the same way perspective drawings do. I'm looking for that same reconciliation in my brain to justify the tool. Okay, perspective works. You're right. You draw a horizon line with 2 points, and now I can draw any building landscape I want, or a cottage, or anything. Right? I can utilize this tool to draw anything. Well, apparently syntax is the same thing. It's a tool for me to build right with. So I'm asking, like, so why does it work? And it seems to relate to these conditional parameters. Like the modus ponens inference rule has the word if, setting up the whole structure of the argument. If P, then Q. We cannot, if we're going to consider the aesthetics of the inference rule modus ponens, we must consider how much this if is the leading, it's the first word, it's the foundation of the entire fucking thing. right? Like to disregard that word would be to disregard the structure of modus ponens. And also, it takes me further. It's like, how could this word be leveraged as the fundamental parameters of reasoning? The word if, right? It's this massive, again, conditional. It's like sets us up to be so virtuous in our argumentation. Like if I have to lead everything I say with the word if, then how tentative is I should be the most tentative person on the planet, so humble with my opinions. Everything I put forward has to lead with if. It's like, oh my God, all of a sudden the structure of formal reasoning has now changed the person I am. I have to be so much more humble than I thought. I thought I could make statements about the sun being hot and universals and all these things. It's like, but then you consider the aesthetics of modus ponens, and I'm just locked to humility, absolute humility.
No, it's interesting because like if you take it back to something physical, it's like just something as simple as putting a square block in a round hole. Like you could say that that's like physical and mechanistic, but it's like you could also say it's like, oh no, well, like the aesthetics of the square, you know, fitting in the hole. Like you could say it's like, well, aesthetically, it still has to have, you know, it can't have.
I want you to finish this thought so badly. I want you to finish it so badly. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, you could say it can't have 4 right angles to fit, you know, like fit in that circle. And you could say that's aesthetic. Like you could say,
yes.
It's like it's all going to be on what you hash out. Aesthetic is aesthetic the actual like mechanistic property right there, or would aesthetic be like the variable like painting on the block or something, right? You know, like that it's going to be on what you hash out with aesthetic there. Like it's going to hinge on what one means by aesthetic.
Absolutely.
Would aesthetic be? Because I think.
Please write this down, bro. I'm y'all went off. No, seriously, dude. I'm stumped. That was amazing. For the love of God, you need to write that down. That
Frank,
was.
You're. Oh man, you're.
No, y'all went off, dude. I can't even think right now. There's so much to process from what y'all just said. I am stumped. That was amazing. I just felt like I was in a discussion with Socrates or some shit.
No, actually, like it's really interesting. I read a lot of so like, you know, a lot of philosophy comes up on the app, but not a lot of people talk about the art theory philosophers. Like I never hear people talk about that, but I read a lot of it when I was like, because I went to school for art, so like and like you don't really hear people like talk about that side of philosophy very, very often. It's pretty interesting, like how yeah, the base level assumptions about what makes something like beautiful and aesthetic, and like how it's tied to nature, and like there's a lot to it.
I wrote a very crude definition of art. I want to find it. Do you have a definition of art?
I really don't. I've had a million.
I hesitate. I really hesitate.
I say that as though it's like, and like someone listening would think I haven't thought about it. It's like, no, I've thought about it so much that I no longer have a definition. Because it's just like, it's all about parameters. It's all going to be about like what you're trying to achieve and what you mean. Like, so the definition is going to hinge on like goals, I think. And I don't know.
I would say it's strictly human.
I think what most people are talking about is some sort of like created aesthetic representation, you know?
Do you think anything else other than humans can do art?
Oh yeah, I think
Okay.
a while since I was reading about birdsong a long time ago, and
Okay.
they
Sure.
they suspect that some bird songs aren't really like to utilitarian aim. Like they suspect
They're not a
suspect.
mating call or a danger warning. They're like
Yeah,
actually for like expression.
yeah, they like people that have studied it long term suspect that in some cases there seems to be no real utility to it. That it seems to be just whimsy.
That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
that's the
I found
coolest if
one of
that's
my
true.
notes. A human art to me is force restriction of existence or creation. I feel like that's the broadest way I can give a definition to what human art is.
Can you say that again? Can you say that one more time?
Force restriction to existence or creation. It's the humans forcing some aspect idea of what existence, feeling, or what parameter of is. It's a lesser form of existence or creation. And then so it's like, because how is a banana taped to a wall? So it's a lesser form. It has some feeling. It has some essence. It's a creation, and it's art has some form of doing. So it's forcing reality. It's forcing creation, existence to form in a certain way, and you get some form of response. But to give it its full meaning, it's a lesser form of what existence is or creation is. And I feel like come to humans, right? I think that's a good definition. It's lesser forms of what reality or creation is.
Huh. I was going like I like the word creation in there, but then now I'm hesitant to agree that it's like a lesser form of it. I would just say, yeah, it's like a form of creation pertaining to the aesthetics like Pai Chi was relating. You could probably mash your two definitions together, but I hesitate to go that last step with you with
Oh,
the like
lesser?
yeah, the lesser part, I suppose. I guess lesser than reality, yes, but
Yes, because
yeah.
at the end of the day, so usually you want a reaction, you want something. So it's a representation, right? It's
Okay,
like
but let me
picture of the sunset and the sunset.
but
Would
let
you
me
equate?
let me
Sorry, go ahead.
catch you. No. I'm interrupting you, so I apologize. But let me catch you up earlier because Pai Chi and I already covered quite a bit of space on this topic, which is that, like historically, realism basically progressed into the state of anti-realism, or like, what would you call it? Abstractism, or
Yeah,
right?
there's a couple different ways to hash out. So like non-representational is going to be anything that is not specifically representing an object or a person or something like that, like has like these like objective notions of understanding its aesthetic. And then there's like abstract, which is like taking it like that wouldn't be necessarily like taking it as far, or it could be taking it completely that far. Like it could be completely abstracted, but you could have slightly abstracted things that are still representational. Like you have an abstract, like Picasso's abstraction is still representational. You can still see like guitars and
The thought here is like we've abandoned realism already. We've achieved it in a certain sense through photography and perspective art, right? We went through the technical historical evolution of like realizing realism. Then we abandoned it and pursued a whole nother stage in art and perhaps other places in culture like science, philosophy, those kinds of things that kind of like go into this postmodern approach to realism that doesn't, it's not like again, not abandoning realism, but maybe going into the depths of realism beyond materialism and physicalism, those kinds of things. So to say whether or not the banana on the wall is more real than a painting of it, or whatever, however we want to digest our examples here, right? It gets a little loose in where we are in history. Basically, we've come to a point in history where our terminology is wading into the pools of abstraction.
this is completely tangential, but I just wanted to say it before I forgot it because I thought of a really funny piece that a friend of mine did in art school. Are you familiar with Rene Magritte and the pipe where it says like this is not a pipe?
Oh, I don't think I am.
So it says
I don't think I am.
It says it in French, but I'll butcher it if I try to say it in French. But essentially,
Like what kind of pipe am I picturing here?
So it's a painting of like an old school smoking pipe.
Okay.
and it says this is not a pipe. And the whole point was like at that point in art history, like people were like getting at like the notion of like the map versus the territory. It's like, so for him to say this is not a pipe, it's like it's just kind of a clever play on reality, meaning like, yeah, it's not a pipe, it's a painting of a pipe, right? You know? But a friend of mine did a piece where he made a piece of pizza and it said this is not a pipe. I thought it was really, really funny.
That's good.
This is like a piece of pepperoni pizza, and it said, "This is not a pipe."
Especially in like modern day where everything is made into a pipe, that has a whole nother context of funniness to it. Outside of the getting the context, it's even still funny, you know?
Where you going with the you started talking about like the art history and then the abstraction and like where were you going with that?
Well, I guess Frank was bringing up this point of realism, reality, and our ability to digest reality. And I think we're at a weird point in history where, like, our old school tools for measuring realism, physicalism, materialism are looking as though they may be outdated. Our modern technology is sort of just breaching in the waters of the discarding. It's postmodern. It's similar to the art phenomenon where we went through realism and now back into a more interpretive lens to see reality. These fluctuations happen not just in art. They happen in our science communities, in our medical communities, philosophically throughout culture. It's kind of like a wave interacting with everyone as the impact of those early artists hit us.
It's if I don't interject, this is not really. It's fascinating to in today's day and age to see more and more like people from Harvard, MIT to go like just consciousness. That could be a thing in the science today. It's very fascinating to see conferences of like very strict physicalists and materialists just to even be open to ideas or even collaborating with people like the Deepoks of the world. It's so interesting. It just it's so fascinating.
Okay, I want to link this a little bit to earlier when we were talking about syntax or like strategies to conversation. I guess we're kind of talking about the precept argument always degrading pi into this shitty aesthetic of conversation. Well, what I notice is that people who are literate in code, who program all day, who design video games, and know a lot about deep syntactical or syntax reasoning, well, they have a realm of thinking about reality that is very abstract because they can come up with worlds in the codes, right, that are very well virtual, right? They aren't really, they're real in the sense the code works and it's all true. The programming is all true, but I mean, when you're talking about walking through, whatever, an alien jungle on another planet, completely immersed in a video game, there's nothing real about that in the sense of, right, reality. So there's these weird, again, juxtapositions of culture going on where if you're programming all day through strict syntax, designing virtual realities, like that juxtaposition of conversation, it must basically emerge the culture we're in. Like I feel like it's related to the aesthetic of conversations going on, basically. Like, I don't know if always being away from reality is necessarily a quote unquote good thing, or if it helps you, or maybe it can be, right? Maybe it can help you completely, reconnect with your loved ones and your relationships, or perhaps it could completely detach you and send you on like a, I don't know, nihilistic loop.
Huh. Fascinating.
But, I'm thinking about this aesthetics and like how it relates to something actually functioning, and like now I finally am grasping like what you're getting at like a little bit more. It's interesting.
Thank you so much for
'Cause
taking the time, bro.
yeah, it literally is like, well, when I transformed it, it's like, oh, this sounds so braggadocious when I took it to how I understood it, but that's how we learn. We take it to things that like make more sense to us. But when I think about it, like from the perspective of, yeah, like putting a square peg in a round hole, it's like the actual mechanism is functioning based off of like the change of the aesthetic. Like, yes, its physical properties are only conjoining, like you're altering the aesthetic when to make it fit. And
Yes,
that's kind of interesting.
very much, man.
Yeah.
Very much.
Now,
Potato orange pill is just related to Bitcoin. If you want to be convinced Bitcoin is what I'm talking about, but we're freestyling today, so I don't know if we're gonna be talking about that. Whatever.
now I want to ask how to. So this is a very weak subject, art, aesthetic things. I have not researched much of it. Now, how can I use it to dip in? I'm more in the medical, like idealism, mind type of stuff. That's more my flavor. How can I use that practical, even in the day to day, or even use it to actually reach to enrich my life or have better arguments and things like that? How can I use these?
Yes. Yeah.
These
I
any advice?
I don't know if Pai Chi is excited to answer this one, but I kind of am. Like the the first thought I had in the medical setting is like how much disregard we have for the aesthetics of medical institutions, how much amazing technology is going on and hard work is going on in our hospitals, right? But like a basic bed or like some comfortable couching or some reasonable privacy is just not as accessible as the $100,000 procedure necessary to like take out your liver. So it's like the aesthetics of our medical centers could be updated. And I know this might not relate completely to what you're asking, but that was my first thought that came. It's like I think we have so much aesthetically, so much work to do in a place like medical institutions. So much money could be thrown at aesthetics and cheaply updated to provide people basic comfort, privacy, and things related to like getting their health back on track. If you're recovering from a surgery and then you're jammed in a room with 6 other people and you're like having to like suffer in front of them, they're all suffering in front of you. There's one washroom you're all sharing. It's like aesthetically, bro, I don't know where to even begin with that. Artistically, there's so many updates we could make outside of the complex scientific procedures of healthcare, right? There's aesthetically a lot of work we can do, and
So
that's
so to
probably
bring
in our
that
everyday life too.
to bring that up, that is very important. So I work in this field every day, and functionally, hospital systems, care, sniffs, and professional care homes have caused the unaliving of at least hundreds of thousands of our patients yearly, because aesthetically speaking, the rooms are a disaster for spreading disease, and so I take a lot of patients
Spot on.
from
Like, how many pills do you need to give them and stuff? You just put them in a
not even just
cleaner
that,
room.
from facility to facility. A lot of times, so I work as a first responder, and to pick up a patient and then to bring him in at the hospital, it's almost I almost knowing simply how bad the room is set up is more likely to actually unalive the patient than simply just fixing them here and then sending them on their way. Just aesthetically speaking, every year it is awful for patient, and it makes me hesitant to even want to move a patient, and it's just so neglected. It's so neglected. It is horrible.
Yes. So we could zoom all the way out to your question about pragmatism, like unrelated to the medical care center. It's like when in your everyday life, you could, even when you're just talking to people, I think aesthetics should be one of the first things we consider. Like, am I ready for this conversation? Am I feeling humble, curious, patient? All these like sort of, again, esoteric questions that we ask ourselves aesthetically before we go into arguing with our loved one about the dishes not being done or those kinds of things. Like, pragmatically, there's a lot we can set up aesthetically to then get us into the state of reasonability for communication or rationalization. Like, we think rationality is this immediate thing. We can just make conclusions about the world no matter how grumpy or how bad of a day we're having. And it's like, I think you should probably tether the fact that on your grumpy days you're making way worse inductive claims than on your better days. Like, let's just concede that point, shall we?
Hmm.
Let's not trudge forward on our worst days assumptions and cling to those as hills to die on. Shall we not do that?
Fascinating. It is neglected in the day to day too. I have to just bring that back to the medical. It's so many doctors and nurses have this ABC approach and then this reactive approach to care that the patient becomes a symptom and a treatment plan and nothing more, and it becomes this horrible approach that doesn't bring in the play of the history, the laughter, the love, the the caring, the compassion that this individual has, that we know in our research that simple things of being depressed, being angry, induces inflammation and brings this and can actually increases every single other thing, or this the history, and it's neglected still.
Yes.
It is unaliving so many patients every year.
Yes, yes. Think about also the aesthetic of death and how that's handled in the institution. I mean, the mourning and grieving process should be one that's uplifting and a whole. It should be an institution ready and garnered for that kind of experience, and it off puts and, like you said, neglects it in such a way that it's disturbing, it's grotesque. It's not even to the point of reasonability. It's actually like you're saying, causing more. It's not helping, and so that's yeah, disturbing reality. But again, these are kind of optimistic realizations for me because it makes me realize there's a lot of work to be done outside of the like technical, scientific STEM and research. There's
Yeah.
a lot of artists have upcoming jobs in the future more than they think. I think designing and thinking aesthetically is a massive part of our culture.
Would you,
Yeah.
as an artist, would you feel afraid of this new AI revolution? Just for example, like one of the first things that are going to go are be like radiologists, primary care doctors, those job fills, things like that. They're going to be gone, and they're some of the most valued pieces of jobs because it's not needed. Do you feel like it could be an issue for you?
Pi, I don't know. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about AI?
Yeah, I don't. I admit I plead ignorance to knowing a whole lot about it. I mean, I know a little bit about it, and I know it as it's currently affecting like some stuff. I'm actually in like a potential class action lawsuit with the company. Well, I don't know if it's the just a model name, or if it's the actual, but Midjourney. Are you aware of Midjourney? Midjourney AI.
Right, I'm not.
Yeah, they're like a I don't know. They're a software company that makes like like visual AI. People use it to make like cheap logos or any image similar to ChatGPT, but specifically mostly visual, I think. And they took like a database of they put tons of artists' work into a database to use for their like algorithm pool, like for their aggregate like
Sure,
imaging.
sure.
But they actually took the work. They didn't just like pull it from like, it's not like the way it works where it just like pulls it from a search engine. They actually like took the work and put it in a database, and they did that with tons of artists. So I might be part of a class action lawsuit. But no, in terms of like how I feel
That's sick.
about it, in terms of how I feel about it in general, I think it's gonna take I think it's going to take some jobs away. Like, I think it's specifically going to take some like low level, um, like more like quote unquote like low level projects out. I don't know that it's going to take like bigger picture, more complex things like out of the picture right away. Like, so what I mean to say is like so for like with design, I think it's gonna like hurt like people that are doing things like logo making, because you can make a pretty quick, easy logo with AI. But I don't know that it lacks a sensitivity right now. So you put the prompts in and it's reading it a specific way, but it's not very nuanced. You don't get a lot of like a really good designer is going to be able to like interpret your ideas so specifically on a human level, like if they talk to you about it, right? And you're not really getting that with AI. You're getting a binary approach to that. right? You know, like yes, it's pulling a lot of resources to create a sort of synthesis, but it's lacking nuance. Even in that approach, it's still pulling from like it's still pulling from like so like say you like some aspect of the prompt is still pulling from like a limited amount of options that's referencing versus like I talk to you, I can get a much more nuanced idea of what you want from a design.
Now, what is
in a
that
short
difference? Because I've always found that fascinating. What is the difference between the human conception of creation versus, okay, let me just put this together? Because it's very similar, right? Because we can't conceive of new, like new things in existence. We can only piece it, just like an AI can, but they can do it a different. What is that key distinction, do you feel?
I mean, I think it's just like you can cut like it could be purely the way I was speaking about it, it could be purely like a mechanistic thing, like not enough space to get all the new, like you're typing in a prompt, right? And so, like, what you say, it's like limited by like what you put in. When you have a conversation, it evolves more like naturally based off of a whole bunch of factors versus like a binary approach that is still limited to what's already existing like based off like the mechanistic parameters. What I mean by that is like you talk to me like if you were to talk to me in person, you're going to be getting like my vocal intonation, my physical like gesticulation, my mental inferences. But when you put in a prompt, at least currently, it's like you're only getting sort of a more binary approach to it. It's just like you type these things in and then it references it based off the words that it's pulling from. It's like, oh, I want like this bird that like you know this like mechanical bird that looks half surreal, half fruit like, right? And then it's just like pulling the words. But it's like in a conversation when someone's talking to me, it's going to be much more nuanced than that. Like they might get like a reaction based off, like I might get a different reaction than based off just how they like express their idea, like when I hear it vocally or something like that. If that makes sense. Sorry, I've never really thought about this like this, so I'm just kind of riffing.
I've always thought there's it's what a computer can't do. I don't know how to formulate this because I don't really think about this often, but there's something of qualia that humans have that cannot be processed like a computer can, that gives that extra oomph that it cannot do, and
that's
qualia,
essentially what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The nuance of qualia. Yeah. I just like it was real scattershot because I don't really think about like AI too often because it's just not what I.
It's going to be important though, because it's AI is so like. So you got to put in quotation marks. Like right now, it's not nuanced, but there's going to be a part where it's going to probably become indistinguishable, and then it's going to be able to pass like Turing tests or what? Mm-hmm. Well, if you think it passed, and it's going to be very hard. So that's why I always put. I think I'm fine. Take jobs, but humans need some sort of universal income and time to. Like payments from the government or something, because it's going to get bad. I do see it where it can get bad in the future.
I think like there's going to be a way to use it in a way that using the tech in and of itself becomes more poetic rather than like these like just a cheap 99 software, cent software that you like put a couple of words in and then walk away from it and it spits out a result. Like to me, it's more interesting. Like I see a lot of artists that are like really opposed to it, but I'm like, well, I would embrace it if you like if someone really takes the time to like understand the coding behind it, then the coding in and of itself can be an art, right? And the approach to using it can be an art. So rather than me be opposed to it, it's like, no, I'm like I want to see it do things. It's like if you're using it in a way to like achieve ends that you think like people can't achieve, well then really truly use it that way in a way that's like poetic, right? That's what's interesting to me rather than just like walk away from it. It's like, well, how can we like use it in an ethical way? and maybe in a more artistic way, a more creative way,
Uh,
rather than just say no to it. Like,
I'm happy for it. It's going to be great. I really see. So there's two sides I see. I see it as being, it's going to be an extension of human existence. It's going to allow us to not be slaves to labor. It will free some stuff. Sadly, the consequences there will be elimination of some places and job fields, but it'll reorient ourselves to doing new things. And I think I can see a world where freedom can exist through the through the future of AI.
Yeah, I got a lot I could say about this. I personally love AI. I use it all the time, all day. I'm not afraid of it, but I kind of do look at it as just extension of like the internet or a library, like libraries, and then the internet happened, and now AI. So it's just a tool. It depends on how we use it. There's dark sections of the library, right? Just like there are sort of faults. I think I liked what Pai Chi said about the coding aspect. Like one of the main uses I use ChatGPT for is that I'll feed it in code for back testing things that I don't know enough about the code to do, and I could just feed it in English and it will fix the code. So that's huge.
Now, I'm curious though. If I would love your response. What is the distinction between AI creation and human creation? That can a human creation do something an AI can't?
Well, I would say the opposite. I would say AI can't do anything that a human can't. It gets everything that it has to create from humans, sort of to Pai Chi's example.
I feel
So
like
it's
we need
it's
Darth Nerder up here for this.
yeah, he might have a better opinion on it, honestly. But I do just look at it as an extension, man, an extension of like a library, right? You can't.
I don't know I don't know enough about.
But
Yeah. I don't know enough about what AI can do. I just don't know enough about AI to like really truly make the distinction. I can like riff based off of what I understand I can do and other like human artists can do, but I don't know what all AI can do, so I can't really speak to the true distinction currently because I just don't know enough about the tech.
That's fair. Have y'all seen how companies, film companies, are trying to make AI models of actors and use them, and not just that, copyright them and put them in new films that have been alive since like the 50s? That's interesting. That's kind of scary.
yeah, that's crazy.
No.
A sort of amorphous triangle, like it's like real jagged and it's all triangular, but it's like a series, it's like a series of sort of like acute and obtuse like triangles, like as one like general shape, right? It just goes, it's real jagged shape, and then the other one is like a blobby kind of round shape. It's that doesn't have any like right angles. And like almost 100% of the time when people ask them what the shape is named, so they have two names for it. One is Kiki and Booba, and almost 100% of the time across demographics, people call the sharp image Kiki and the soft image Booba. It's pretty cool.
I think I have seen this before, and yeah, I totally get the
It's
concept related to aesthetics,
it's like
100%.
98 or 99% or some shit.
Huh. What do you think that means though?
I think it has to do with something with like tying into nature in some way. Like we understand um maybe we understand like soft sounds in respect to soft shapes in respect to like like the tranquility and related to like certain like innate shapes in nature, things like that.
Well,
Yes, and
what,
there's something tied in with like language and geometry. There's a
and then
relation,
language, yeah.
I would say.
so, but then my response would be, it would have to be oriented to which language. Like, say we did this experiment in America, and then we did it in Russia, and we did it. Would there still be a similar consensus?
Well, I know
I wonder.
yeah, I know they use. I'm not as familiar with the literature on the different names, but they do use a couple different words. They change the linguistics. Like they also call it like Takiti Maluma. It's called like Buba Kiki, Takiti Maluma, and they have like different uh, but I think the originators of the study tried to create words that weren't as etymologically tethered to certain roots. Like they tried to like make it like a combination effect.
Nice.
Yeah, to make better controls for the study. It's been a while since I read about it, but that was like what they tried to do was like get it untethered to like a specific associations like etymologically.
Peace out, Daddy Bear. Peace out. Again, sorry for the background noise. That will be gone in a second, but yeah, like the link between geometry and language seems to be the most simple way in my mind to boil down the relationship here of that example.
It's like the general like I was looking it up just now, and like they call it sound symbolism, and it says like linguistic sound may be perceived as similar to not only sounds but also to other sensory properties such as size, vision, touch, or abstract domains, even like emotion and value judgment, which I thought you would find really interesting logic. The emotion and value judgment part, because you always talk about empathy and logic. I think that's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's super interesting to think about this deeply. I can't seem to. Okay, like if I'm to be biased, you guys let me know if it's really ridiculous and you can't hear me here. But if I'm to be biased towards something like physicalism or materialism, that's where I'm kind of getting the geometry from. Like I don't seem to be able to parse out geometry from physicalism, and that seems to be like in a way like the truth maker of language. Like we seem to boil it down, right? Like even if we're blind, deaf, and dumb, abstract shapes still give us some relationship to reality, basically.
Well, that's what we see reality is, not what reality fundamentally is. It's no,
Well, that's where I guess I'm making a bit of a bold assertion. I think there might be some claim here to fundamental reality being, and like again, to Pai Chi's credit, what he just said about emotions and value. I know this is very outlandish, but is there basically some
aesthetic relationship here between our emotions, our values, right? And then our language and geometry, like good and bad geometry, like not just utilitarian, but also related to how it makes us feel, sort of, right? And like how we label these things linguistically. And is there some sort of truth behind it? If 99% of people all agree on this, right, abstract labeling, then there seems to be some underlying like truth behind this pattern, this connection, this relationship.
I wouldn't necessarily agree. I think that's a consensus issue. So just because if say we rewind time consensusly, we could see I could think of a world where some form of chaos, some form of other truth, some form of moral grounds could exist. Not just because a population thinks it's true doesn't mean it has truth to it itself in and of itself.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that consensus doesn't determine truth. Nonetheless, I think it's a good indicator towards what is true. I mean, right, to argue, to be the one, because like this example is such a good one because it's so abstract. No one's trying to claim the actual, like, I guess, truth about which shape or should be labeled which word, you know?
Which
But then we have this internal feeling about it, which seems to be, again, like true, almost maybe truer than anything we could be basing our consensus on. You know, it almost reverses. It's like it gives consensus validity. It's not the other way around. It's not that consensus gets it validity. It's showing you like, look, maybe there's some validity to consensus.
ooh, that could be a very dangerous thing.
Well, if we abandon that notion, right, then we're just recognizing, again, circling back, I suppose, to like just the problem of language or problem of induction
Yeah.
or inference rules or all those kinds of things. Like, again, as long as we're recognizing the people taking the survey, right, choosing which label, no one, as long as no one's dogmatic about the labeling, like it should be called boba, like no, I'm going to unalive everyone in the term of boba, like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like that's when this becomes this ridiculous thing. All of us taking the survey should know this is kind of a ridiculous fun question. There's nothing serious about this labeling, right? You don't need to be like autistic about what is true here. We're just taking a fun survey, and it's there seems to be some relationship. To deny the relationship would be like to go back to whether or not it's actually true, if the boba is the name. Like no one's saying that really, right?
Well,
We're just
they've linked it even to like, so like when you say booba, what you do with your lips, you create like uh, a more open, sort of circular shape. When you're saying booba, you're like using your lips, and then when you say kiki,
sure.
you're like getting tighter. Basically,
I wonder if someone who like, and I know this is like a crazy example, but if someone who had like, was mute and blind and had to read it in braille, if they would still
Oh yeah,
they would
or
still
even
label it the same.
yeah, or even just read someone's lips.
Oh, true. Right.
Yeah, if you just read someone's lips, I wonder if you get a similar labeling. That would be cool if they could see it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like these paradoxes of like, can we picture a shape without a color? Like those kinds of paradoxes get us down to, I think, the crux of what shape and color are. It's not meant to be a trick question, right? We're not meant to. Of course, there's no shape. There's no color without a shape, or vice versa, right? There's no shape without color because these things are a relationship. And I think it's similar to, well, I guess the best example would be the one you brought up earlier of like our values and emotions. Like, we cannot deny that these patterns, these, whether they're geometric patterns or linguistic patterns, cause an emotional pattern in us, right? There's an inner feeling, whether it's, and it relates back to the aesthetics. It's like whether it's feeling grotesque, feeling something's beautiful, taste good, taste bad, these kinds of things. Like, to deny that relationship is basically to deny reality, because like those are the inner workings of our logical reasoning. It goes back to that, can we separate a shape from a color? It's like you know, you could drive yourself crazy trying to undo that mess, but to just work with the comparison is actually a much better much better practice.
Mhm. It's interesting though, because it's like I feel like the linkage that we make now is tied to so many other like sub notions versus may like what I mean by that is like it's not strictly tied to nature. It's like it could be tied to like community and culture trends and so it complicates aesthetics.
Like, okay, deep, go a little further into that. Like, you mean what do you mean by that? The
Like
truth of it?
someone's revulsion to heavy metal
I
like
know.
might be like more of a cultural revulsion than a sound revulsion. Maybe they associate heavy metal with losers or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Dude, you're nailing it on the head here. This is where it gets
like,
really,
I say
really nuanced.
I say this as a metalhead, so I'm not besmirching any metalheads out there. I love metal.
No, I have to
You know,
ask you, what is the
Go
color
ahead.
of an electron?
well, again, electrons may or may not like actually exist. Locating them, right, isn't.
Exactly. Like, what's the color
Yeah.
of a gravitational wave or the
Yeah.
curvature of the universe? It's
Yeah.
I can see, and I can come up with the world without color, or I can see it though. You don't need color for shapes or aspects of what things is
Yeah.
are.
So like okay, yeah. There's a lot we could go into there. But I suppose like wait, go ahead.
Shape definitely seems to be perhaps more first order, I guess.
I don't even know if the universe has shape. Like, so I don't necessarily
True.
believe. I don't even necessarily know if I even believe in some certain concept of time. I think it's a constriction between our ego trying to conceptualize order, but in reality, I'm not too sure if time exists. And everything is really, like I love Alan Watts and his stuff, and like, what is a what is an object without a backdrop and stuff. Everything is off of each other consistently. But as if you like have this weird, you look outside of it all, it's all one. I hate using this language. It sucks to use this language, but it's all one thing. But it's like nothing. So is there really shape to the universe, or is like?
Oh yeah, you're. I think you go on Jordan's panel a lot too, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm more. That's more of my flavor. But this is yeah.
Well, no, Logic has a similar vibe to Jordan. He keeps it kosher. He keeps it cool. But no, I was just referencing it because I if I remembered correctly, you're like you're an idealist, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm building it, but I'm some form of idealist.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the color of a mind? What's the color of a mind? Okay.
There's a lot that could be said, but my mind basically goes with the ego usually drives us to be out of sync with the patterns. Like, if there's a pattern related to language or geometry or shapes or physicalism, however you want to label these things, that we don't recognize, it seems like the thing kind of driving us forward must be the ego, because to be in sync with those patterns would be to see the oneness, if you want to say that, right? The oneness and everything. As soon as I separate myself out and see the hard edges between myself and the things around me,
Yes.
or maybe don't appreciate those hard edges the way I should, right, then I fall into uh,
Yes,
disillusion.
exactly. But that oneness doesn't have those attributes. It's not a line. It's not red. It's not up, down. Like those are ego concepts. There's nothing like that.
So, okay, so this is where biblical things kind of get interesting to me because there might be something to the notion that you're always sort of out of sync, though. Like maybe the reason you're experiencing the things is like you're not in sync. So you have this job to do, which is basically like try to synchronize yourself to the patterns. But like every time you're stubbing your toe and like, you know, waking up without your teeth brushed or whatever, it's like you're not you're not doing the things necessary to keep yourself in line with the patterns of oneness. It's like it's weird how we have this like maintenance problem. We have a
I see that.
responsibility. Yeah, we can't just claim, oh, we're one with everything and then deteriorate into the soil. Oneness seems to be this like responsibility of dealing with everything and everyone else around you, right?
Yeah, there is something to oneness that is right. There's this happening. There's this happening, and it's funny. I love the Buddhist teaching and stuff like that, and you can detach from that, and you can reach that oneness in there, that enlightenment, even in the ego state, and that's always been interesting to me.
I guess my biggest oh pardon. My biggest my biggest thing on here is experimenting with the method of conditional reasoning and trying to see the pattern that every time someone puts for how does the pattern of someone putting forward a claim without a conditional element to the claim affect their emotions, and then like versus someone who does, like every time I observe someone utilize conditional arguments, there seems to be a pattern there between their emotional stability. So that's kind of the main thing I observe on here. Like literally when I say conditional arguments, I basically am just looking for the word if before someone makes an argument. Like if this is true, then this, right? If someone just says this is true over and over again, I observe negative emotional reasoning. The pattern's pretty simple, but maybe I'm onto something, maybe I'm not. I don't know.
We can only think. You never. It's always the thing too. No, I also don't necessarily believe we would find certain things like certain truths. I think there isn't a thing of truth. There's a truth on a truth on a truth, and it can just there's all this higher level of truth that we may never, even if there's this universal consciousness, it may not even understand of itself. It's this thing of this unknowing that will always exist.
Yeah, so that basically arrives me at my method is that like we need to relax. We need a method for relaxing ourselves of our thinking.
Yeah,
That's the main problem. The problem is not what's going on in your life. The problem is your thoughts are ruining your experiences. You're overthinking, you're underthinking, right? You're not planning enough or you're planning too much. You have high or low expectations. You're just out of balance
so how do
with
you do it
with your
practically
thought.
though? Because not
Well,
everyone's gonna become a
yeah,
philosopher or an artist a day to
right.
day. How do I go okay,
Well,
whatever.
well, you have to. This is why it's so fascinating to me. You have to realize the rules of syntax. Imagine your computer, right? And before you put in the code, there's strict syntax to your thinking. You cannot just put in a thought to your mind. You have to follow the strict rules of rationality. And the main one is, for me, conditional thinking. You have to put an if conditional operator, like the word if has to lead your sentences, lead your thought. If the first line of code does not have an if in front of it, you're going to suffer. Your software and hardware are not going to be aligned. There's going to be a bug in the system.
Well, it depends on
Well,
which
then let me ask you
variables
this.
you're defining too, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to throw this because how do you do that for the less tangible things? Like, if I stay with this person, like how do you differentiate between that something that's less logical? Like, should I stay? If I stay, I'm trying to throw out something non-physical.
Well, we could get bogged down in a specific argument, but the real meditation is on this conditional because it makes every thought tentative. We can never reach certainty is basically the implication of the if means that everything's tentative. You can't reach certainty with any of your thoughts, whether it's about your loved ones, the argument you had with your mom, whatever it is, whether or not, all the dark and lovely thoughts you have. There's no way to actually hit rock bottom with those thoughts because remember, the thinking is tethered to a syntax. And that syntax is conditional. It's like trying to think of a shape without a color, even though perhaps your mind is capable of that. That's just an example of like this relationship, like, right? It's the example of like how we have to tether to some syntax. We have to use the rules of thinking in order. If we just bog forward thinking, my girlfriend's an idiot. My girlfriend's an idiot. No, I'm breaking up with her. My girlfriend's an idiot. I can't believe she did that. Notice how none of those thoughts are conditional. Right? It just is you'll notice that the negative thoughts are way easier to produce, and when you struggled a little bit to produce a conditional thought, that right there shows the power of the conditional. Whoa, see how you couldn't if my girl okay, well just imagine one. Like it's hard. It's hard to set up a proper conditional argument, and that's part of the meditation. It's like this is a solvable problem if you relax and take your time with it, but the more you rush through it and trudge forward, the less you're going to get out of it. Your thoughts are going to devour you into, I don't know, a negative rut.
Hey, by the way, hello.
Yo,
Michael.
JD.
Hey, man, this is really interesting, and I think the if scenario that you're putting forward here, I think it's a good method, but I don't know if that could work for everything. I think one of the things like I would also sort of explore, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but understanding the why, right? Like, why am I feeling this way, right? You can say that this person's stupid and there's no other sort of thoughts left after that, but then what are you trying to accomplish, right? You want to get a state of mind that's peaceful. Is it an action that's required, or is it a thought that's required?
Okay, so the reason I derived this if thing is from looking at inference rules. So I'm like, what is logic? It's a strict set of formal principles guiding argumentation. And when I look at what those principles are, like the laws of logic, what inference rules are, what is modus ponens? Why does it work? And I look at it, the first word in modus ponens is the word if. Okay, we have our own ability to act and think and ask our questions of why. I liked your point there. But like I'm talking about a strict syntax to stick to, like an algorithm. Basically like an algorithm, a cheat code for
Define a
thinking.
goal, I guess, first. Like, so if you're trying to get to some kind of goal or some kind of a state or something that you're trying to, I guess, attain.
Rational thought.
Process.
The goal would be rational thought. Like there was earlier said like maybe there's examples that are less logical. Well, those maybe not be like if my cat dies, right? And I'm watching it pass in front of me, and then I have a whole day of like dealing with the body and consoling my girlfriend. There's very little like rational induction going on in that day. Right? What truth can I really come to about what's happening to me other than the unfortunate events, and I just kind of have to go through it, right? For me to try to grasp at why did this happen to me? It's like there's no resolving that tension. It's more productive to really appreciate through gratuity the life of my cat and how old she lived, and and how peaceful she died, and all those kinds of, and take the responsibility on of let's deal with the body. And those seem to be all conditional syntax
There's a why
related
behind
thoughts.
all of that conditions, right? The why behind that is you want to be good.
No, that's my point. Is like, okay,
No,
that's my
the why
point. There,
behind it is that
okay. Okay, but that's my point is like there isn't like when I'm experiencing this is a perfect I'm trying to answer your question. This is a perfect example, bro. When my cat dies and I'm so depressed, all I want to do is ball up in my bed with my girlfriend and not do anything, right? So, but why? So then why would I go out and spend money on flowers? I
Well,
just
you got to
spent
figure out the
I just
why.
spent $400, but in my mind I can't reconcile that, right? I just spent $400 at the vet. We're broke already. Our cat just died. I don't need to spend another $30 on stupid flowers. So why go do this? There's no rational reason why I would go buy flowers,
There you
right?
go.
I
So
can
now you can move forward to step number two, where you
no,
go
no,
next.
no, no. But the point is I went and bought flowers.
Okay.
I went and bought flowers. There's in the moment I couldn't reconcile it. I just felt in my heart
Yeah,
there
yeah.
wasn't a clear reason why I needed to go do that. I just knew I needed to go do that. And in the end, it was a really good symbol of the cat passing. And it was
Exactly.
right. I could read, but in the moment, what my point is I didn't have an answer why I need to go do that. If anything, all the answers were convincing me this is a stupid thing. Don't go waste
Dude,
your money on this.
and
But I
you're
was
hitting a
right. I
key
should
point
have
there.
gone done that.
But like this thing that you're hitting all the right points here because you're building your awareness of everything that's going on, right? There's things that you're conditioned that meaning like logically it doesn't make sense in your head to spend more money to get flowers for somebody that's already passed away, right? It's logically it's not reasonable. You don't see the reason behind it, but at the same time, the society that's conditioned to say that this is the nice gesture, and you become sort of part of that. So you're sort of conflicted between the two, right? It's the awareness of the two
Okay,
but then,
okay,
so
okay,
you do the reasonable thing, which is now to get the flowers. So it was a good gesture. Did you feel better after that?
okay, but okay, I did obviously. Yeah, they
There you
really
go.
helped. They really helped.
But
But I want to
others feel better after that.
but I also want to drill home the point why they kind of help because like in those moments of depression, you don't feel part of a culture. You don't feel like I'm not trying to do anything. I don't give a fuck, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
not trying to find. I'm not trying to follow some tradition. I'm not trying to do something that my like parents taught me to do or some shit like that. I don't know ultimately why I went and got the flowers. I also didn't need to. I could have just spent all day in bed. Maybe that would have been better, right? But there's this internal this is what I'm trying to say is like there's this internal movement towards making an effort, right? Of
Yep.
towards the good, and that seems like a conditional thing. That doesn't seem to be based on any like
Oh, here's
empiricism.
what's
There's no
primordial.
there's no empirical data that tells you flowers are the thing to do, really.
That's
You
your
know?
intuition, bro. That's your
Y-
intuition guiding you in that
I would have
essence to say.
if I don't mind adding, it seems practical, but there still needs a foundation to work off that practicality, right? Sure, if to help, but there's still no foundation to ground yourself on that process of thinking.
Yeah, when something like that happens for sure, like you don't know the answer. You know the answer, but you don't know the answer, or if you don't want to get to that answer, because everything else will distract you to say, this can't be it. This is not logically right. Even though it's
Yeah, because I
happening,
could.
you're in it, right? You're doing it. At the same time, then you reflect back and said, was that really logical? I think so. This is what I used to do too. Again, I'm just speaking from experience, right? uh, I used to fall into this. I call this a trap now, but back then I just ignored the other side, right? Which was me, my internal sort of, feelings and gestures that or things that were guiding me toward doing certain actions that were beyond logic. However, they were the right actions, right? So the scenario is something like, well, you got two job offers, okay? One that pays more, and the other one that you actually truly enjoy doing. Okay, which one are you gonna go for?
Yeah.
Right? So logically it says, well, get the more money, you want to be financially stable, this and that, right? This is prestige, this and that. But the intuition says, well, this is what I really wanted to do, even though it's less money. This is what the
Yeah.
life path is, right? So something like that, it's always that scenarios that always come up throughout life, right? And I think that's why I'm like kind of excited about this conversation that you're having with Logical Troll. It is deep down, like there's some kind of a guiding force, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I appreciate what you're saying there. I want to drill home one more thing here, which is that, like, I think the thing most people are getting wrong is that logic is a method for a moment when we don't know really the reason or why we're going to do something. If the action is clear, we can say that's rational, I suppose. But like I think logic also applies to those moments where we don't know what to do. In fact, that's very much when it applies. It's this method of deduction,
Yeah.
reducing down all the possible ways we could act
Hey,
into one, right? Don't
just
jump
sorry to interrupt.
off.
I,
Go
just,
ahead.
I gotta head out. I'm leaving, guys. Appreciate the talk. It was amazing. Hopefully we can talk again.
For sure, Frank, you're welcome anytime. I hope we talk again too, man. I followed you back. Peace and love.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, like, um,
So logic, is it always subjective? Let me ask you that question.
not quite subjective, but I would say again conditional.
On
There's
what?
some, well, condition is an
Personal
interesting,
bias?
well, no, not necessarily, just on some sort of relation. Some sort of, like, okay, this is a perfect example, dude. I always use this example, but the problem of mapping the coastline, bro. For centuries, humans couldn't map things. Mapping things was a really difficult thing to do because imagine how fractal the coastline is. You could zoom all the way into every rock, or you could zoom all the way out and just draw a straight line, and now nowhere knows any detail, right? So that problem was solved by rationality, logic. Logic, the logical method, built, well, Rene Descartes, using logic, built a system called the Cartesian plane. He unified algebra and geometry into the grid system. But the grid system doesn't have any bias in it because, well, depending on how you say it, right? What the grid system does is it makes you up front choose your bias, choose the scope. It says, it admits we cannot map the coastline perfectly. So choose how detailed you want it, and that's how detailed will give you the map. That's what the grid system does. So it presupposes your bias. You have to choose the metric, right? For every inch on the page is worth a kilometer. Is every inch on the page worth 100 kilometers? And once you choose that metric, now we can draw you the map to that exact detail within the parameters of these grid, right? An inch by inch grid giving you that exact detail. So that's how logic works. Logic is this method for parameterizing what we don't know. We
Sounds
cannot
like
map the
constraints.
coastline.
Sounds
Pardon?
like narrowing down the constraints that you might have to
That's
pick
it.
whatever choice, right?
Yes. Limiting the possible, constraining the possibilities. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Meaning the possibility. So then,
Okay, now, but I want to go back to your point about bias because I want to highlight the bias and then I want to like disregard it, right? Like the bias is the utility. How does logic work? We utilize the bias. We say, what's the metric? Okay, at 1 inch equals 100 kilometers. But now that we have that metric, we can build a beautiful map. So in your mind, when you're having a disagreement with your girlfriend, right? If you don't have a metric, parameters constraining your claims, you're just going to run right off the course with it. You're going to go right insane. You're going to draw lines from the dishes to her cheating on you type shit. Right? So you need to constrain all the way down to like, right, the possibility that basically you're wrong about the assumptions you're making.
see, that's a recipe for an argument and a fight with your girl, dude. What you want to do is understand her emotions. Just personally saying, you know. So I guess this logic. Let me ask you this question: have you ever thought about it, applying it towards somebody's emotional state of being? Because they're not logical at that point in the first place, right? In any situation, in any circumstance, right? Just whether it's mapping or whether it's observing. If a person's in a heightened emotional state of mind, right? How can this method of logic
Yeah.
and constraint, I guess, be applied? Did you ever think
Yes.
about that, or is that even something that
I'm surprised you're asking the question because yeah, that is actually the claim I'm making. I'm making the claim that, remember going back to the word bias, that this method, right, the Cartesian plane is of the utmost empathy. It's of the utmost empathy to anyone else's bias. It's a complete methodology for representing your opposition's bias. Mapping the opposition's territory, dude.
We do seem to have like I don't know that it's like strict with everyone though, you know, across the board in respect to like their emotional state and their ability to like be logical. Because like you have people like um you have people like Alex Honnold. He's that free solo climber.
Yeah,
Um,
I do know him.
yeah, that dude is like they've done studies on his brain and his amygdala like is just like cool as a cucumber in respect to like situations that would trigger other people. I don't know. It's
Okay, so link that back to what you're saying about like
there's like
what are you trying to say?
what I mean is like there's a multiple realizable states. Like there's this idea of multiple realizability. You can have different emotional triggers and different like neuron transmission going on that are indicative of the same mental state. Like in two people, you could have someone making like a quote unquote irrational choice and their amygdala could be completely triggered, and then you can have someone making an irrational choice and their amygdala is like not triggered at all.
Yeah, that's very interesting because
Yeah.
I would probably denote back to the amygdala more than the claims or whatever how else we're relating rationality.
And
Like I would
that's
right.
that
Yeah.
and that concept of multiple realizability is what complicates notions of like this is getting off topic, but this gets
No.
into like mind brain theory. It starts to complicate the monist versus dualist perspective because of if brain is identical to mind, then why are you having similar brain states and capabilities indicative of different physical states, right?
Yeah, I guess I would just struggle to see like the point about the rock climber is that his amygdala is cool as a cucumber as he's dangling hundreds of feet or thousands of feet over the earth, and most people would be freaking out. And my claim would be that is a testament to how rational he remains. The irrationality is the very thing pulling you off the wall as you fall to your death. He remains cool as a cucumber, rationally deducing the holds that he can grab and where he should take breaks and all those kinds of things. The moment his amygdala goes out of whack is the moment he falls, right? He starts panicking, his heart rate
But
goes up.
but you
So
have people
right.
that are capable of doing the same thing when it's going out of whack is what I'm saying. Like also that's what's weird about it is like
So how
yeah.
yeah, so where yeah, is it like but okay, like I'm would I like I guess I don't quite believe it in the sense that like he's obviously you're using him as an example because he's like a phenom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like
Yeah.
right. So like
They
are
don't
there
know
other
and they
people
don't
like
know if
him?
it's sorry, you go. We were talking to
No, I'm just wondering if there are like other people like him that are
you.
like right.
Yeah, like I haven't looked. I all I know about like the brain stuff regarding him was just like the little bit in the documentary on him.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't really go into it, and like but like when the neurologist was doing like the fMRI, she didn't know that if it was like something innate in him or if it was something that was like down he ground it down from his actions.
Yeah, both, probably both. Yeah.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
both. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so and like so I guess it's very interesting to me because again, like someone could be like okay, so many things are happening right now in my thoughts, but like he sounds to the populace, he sounds outrageously irrational. Well, you're gonna climb up that mountain. The hell are you talking? So we use rationality very colloquially. We think logic and rationality gets us to some end. But again, the scope problem of drawing the coastline relates to the scopeability of the rock climber. His goals are very different than the old woman on the street. Of course,
I
she's
think the whole logic is
shaking it.
flawed.
Pardon me.
I think the whole logic is flawed. I think rational and logic isn't always the same. First of all, right? Because here's what I think, right? Because what I see is both two people could be logical. One can say, "I want to climb the mountain." That's his logical view, rational because of lack of fear, right? Because in the state of mind that he's in, he sees it as an opportunity, a challenge, a something that he wants excited about. Whereas the other person, also logical, also rational, has a level of fear that it might fall, right? So from that perspective, it's completely right and logical and rational from that point of view, right? So it's not like it's never just a one way from what I understand it is. And I
Okay,
don't know if that's
okay,
what you're saying or
okay,
not.
but now I challenge you. Give an example of one that would be irrational.
What would be irrational?
Yeah,
I
try
guess
to link it to like the mountain climbing thing if you can. I'm trying to think too.
I guess only irrational thing would be like to call one of them wrong. Because if you're
To
able to see
what?
the
To
end of
what?
the story, then why would you call them irrational, right?
What was your answer? I didn't hear it.
And the answer would be like the person that's saying that's illogical, or one of them is illogical when they're both, right in their from where their vantage point.
Hmm. I would say I would say something like if someone said, if the old woman was like, these crazy kids climbing mountains, they're stupid, and then she started climbing the mountain. That would be a demonstration of irrationality. It's like, what? You're saying
Wow.
one thing and then you're doing
I
another.
don't
You
know.
said
It's like
rock climbing is unsafe. Or if the kid was like, I love rock climbing, and he had all his gear on, right? It's like, I love rock climbing. It's so high up there. I take risks all the time, and then he just never goes rock climbing. He's just always in the town talking to the old
he's
people about how
lying.
he rock climbs.
He's
What?
just lying, right? It's not rational.
Well,
Plus,
maybe
if
he goes to the base and climbs a little, like once in a while, right? But it's still just kind of this irrationality of like separating. So I'm trying to like logic. Okay, this is what I'm kind of like the rigorous form of logic, the rigorous valid structure, the syntax that keep our inference rules in line with conclusions or scientific reasoning or those kinds of things seem to also trickle down to, right, our cultural sort of relationships, not only to ourselves but how we think and how we think about each other. These things are related. Like, we think of them as separate. We think colloquial usage and then academic rigorous usage, but I see them as very connected, right? Like, basically I'm making the claim that the amygdala has been, developed to such a point where his rationality, the rock climber's rationality, is of such extreme, right? Its proof is in the pudding. He's climbing something no one else has ever climbed. So that's like extreme rationality. That's like, if we don't give that the proof, the credence it deserves, right? This risk management, again, this ability to like deduce down what he shouldn't do, right? To get his way up to the top, like, it's like extreme rationality.
It's interesting because like I watch a lot of extreme sports of all different varieties, and then I like watch it like I see like follow social media accounts, and like there's always comments like from randos like these judgmental comments about what people are doing, and it's always like their opposition to it doesn't seem tied to rationality. It's more tied to like a value judgment.
Yep, yep.
It's like they're the one accusing this person of being irrational, but yet it's almost inevitably tied to like, well, what will you do if you fall and your mom has to
Yes.
pay for your insurance and blah blah
Yes.
blah.
Yes. Yes.
Criticize anything else, right? So you tell who you are when you doubt another. It's a profound way of looking at it, right? Like if we don't understand rational, we're naturally going to speak up about it, or out of some kind of fear, some kind of concern, some kind of thing that's within us, right? Not even though we're seeing the other person do it, but what is perceived is what's within us, right? So that could be, oh my God, I've seen somebody fall from the mountain before, and and then you put yourself in that situation, say, I would never do that, and now next time,
Okay. We're
there's a
drilling the
bias that's
point home.
refused.
You're drilling it home. The method of doubt is the thing that we're talking about. Logic is this tool of doubt. For the old woman to think that her skepticism is more sharpened than the guy climbing the rock, she's disregarding the hours that person has spent testing holds, building the strength up, all those things. The doubt, the rock climber is actually doubting more meticulously. He's applying skepticism more meticulously and more rigorously than the woman in the street. She's just waving her cane saying, oh, it's dangerous, and walking away. He's walking up to the mountain, feeling the rock, asking himself, how dangerous is this? And then incrementally taking those risks to learn the true danger. So much so that he's at the top, shaking his cane back at her, saying, I proved to you, it's not as dangerous as you thought, right? And that's the truth. The doubt is the very thing being leveraged. Her doubt led her astray. She thought no one could ever climb the mountain, right? The old lady in the village. His doubt led him to the top of the mountain, proving her wrong and
Well, they're both
incrementally.
right still. They're still both
No,
right.
no, he proved her wrong.
Well,
If
he didn't prove,
she
he
held
proved
if
himself
if
right
she
that he can do it. He didn't prove her wrong at all.
if
Right?
she held the case, I'm assuming she held the story her whole life. I'm painting the picture that this old lady her whole life went through,
This is
saying
like
no one will ever climb that mountain.
well, it's
You
just
know?
like a old woman bet against this guy to say you can't climb that mountain. I'll give you $5. See, now he
Yeah.
has something to prove. But
Yeah,
if it's
something
the
like that.
commentary, if it's just
It
a
could
simple
be enough.
commentary,
It doesn't have
there's
to
a
be
no
money
to
though. It could be enough just sword in the stone. The old story of like all the villagers try to pull the sword out of the stone. Who knows if it was the incremental, loosening of every strong man in the village that actually relieved the stone. But the boy who finally at the end walked up and relieved the stone to become king is the king, regardless of who loosened it or the reasons behind. It's like that is the chosen one. The sword loosened from the stone the moment that boy touched it.
Well, that's
Right.
fine, right? So at the end goal, whatever sort of the last touch was, that can determine the winner. Okay, I think there's something in between that most people miss is assumptions. Many people make many assumptions, right? And this is sort of a natural behavior. And I call this, nobody will teach you this, assumptions are a path to destruction. Okay, because when you fall into the trap of assumptions,
Yes.
you make more assumptions. More
Yes.
assumptions come with more expectations. They're
But
tied
but
together.
but we can scope our assumptions and restrain them in a way that's productive. Like the reason, again, mapping the coastline works is because our assumptions are being constrained. We are making assumptions. The metric is the golden standard, right? We need our assumptions in order to draw the picture. But then it's not as if we're clinging to those assumptions. We can manipulate the metric and scope out in and out to whatever degree we want. Furthermore, when a village makes the policy that we will name king the strong man who pulls the sword from the stone, that's the assumption they're making, to your point, and leading their society to detriment. Now a young boy comes and pulls it out. Well, no one expected that, right? We were all expecting some strong man, and so that's why the debate incurs. It's like, well, now everyone says I loosened it, I was the one who went before the boy, and so it becomes this, again, like exactly what you're saying. The assumption wasn't constrained properly in a way that all of the people in power could actually get what they wanted out of the policy,
I see that a little bit differently. I see that it was people's faith, right? That whatever
Well,
pulls
me
it
too.
out was
I
the
see that
strong
too.
one, right?
Me too.
And then R would be the assumptions would be that everything else that came before was loosening it up. Logically, that makes perfect sense, right? But in the story, I'm not sure if that was the case because it was never loose. So the kid
Right.
did pull it up, right?
Well,
So
this
then
would be the
that
debate,
goes
yeah.
against logic, right? So the common logic of, right, well, if somebody, repetitive motion, keep touching it again and again, it will eventually turn loose.
But see, that would be the only logical explanation, because a young boy could never pull the sword or the stone if it was all these strong men for months have been walking up to it, yanking and yanking. How is it possible that if they hadn't
Logically, it
loosened
makes
it?
no sense. I know, I get you.
But
Logically, it makes no sense,
but
the
you
story is
could go
there.
deep. You could go deep into the science of rocks or whatever. I'm sure the temperature changed, right? Maybe they went through the winter, and then as spring comes around the corner, the rock moves a bit, and now the boy goes there that morning, and he can pull it out. Who knows what the explanation
You
is?
didn't go into the what if world, bro. That will drive you crazy.
Well,
Right?
but that what if is the logical method. That's what I'm saying. That's because that's exactly what the assumption mitigated the rulers of the village to see. What if a young boy walks up and pulls it out? No one thought of that.
The one of the things that also got to be careful is that we never know all of the variables, right? We can assume that this makes logical sense. I know this, my instrument can show me this, right? So we try to make the best educated guess based on the situation, based on the tools and instruments we have.
Yeah,
However,
I'm saying that is logical.
variables, right? So I have to keep an open mind to say that another possibility could arise, right?
That 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 is logic.
Right, that's faith and logic.
Well, no, that
Faith is the
openness.
unseen.
I'm saying openness to possibility. That is what logic is.
That's faith too. Definition of faith is actually walking into the unknown without any preconceptions, which is also science. Science does the same thing. Any experiment, any exploration, they go into the unknown without any preconceptions. Well, a lot of the scientists actually have a hypothesis, which kind of defeats the purpose. But when you start off a new test, it's actually out of faith that whatever they will discover, and they will accept that as the truth. It's that leap into the unknown, and most scientists won't see it this way, but that's exactly what it is. Think about that for a minute. And I know, and I'm blending the two of that sort of the religion and the science together, but the definition itself is very clear. So when I thought about it, I said, "Oh, this is hilarious," because I know how people are against it, but they don't see that they're actually doing it. They're in it as well, whether you look at it from the science perspective or from the religious perspective. It's one and the same, right? Anyways, yeah.
I don't know. I would juxtapose faith against logic. Like my faith towards something has no conditionals. You know, it's not a what if. When I have faith, it's not a what if. I like cherish it to the degree
Faith is
that,
never faith.
pardon me.
That's not the definition of faith. See, I think most people don't know the definition of faith. Faith is
Well,
yeah.
go ahead.
So, let me just bring it up really quick here, right?
I don't believe in objective definitions, so I don't know if you do.
Oh yeah, that is also true. I mean that you can have everything is subjective from that perspective, then, right?
Well, definitions specifically, like we're kind of talking about constraining variables, etc. So like, yeah,
All of it is.
faith is just another term to be constrained. We could
So,
constrain it in this conversation however we want, really. But I would personally juxtapose it against logic. I wouldn't say logic and faith are the same thing because logic is this strict deductive form of questioning what you believe. Faith is, holding on to your belief with such,
no,
you
no, no,
know,
no, no, no. So
mhm.
this is the difference between faith and belief, and I'm gonna make it clear. So faith is an open-minded acceptance of the truth, while the belief, what the people have, is a wish that the truth be one of what they want, right? So belief is like holding on; it clings, whereas faith, it allows you to be open to whatever the truth is, and that's walking into the unknown, sort of with the preconceptions, without any preconceptions. That's the
Yeah,
difference
but
between
where have
faith
you
and
got
belief.
that definition? I've never really used that definition before. Usually I link it to like a Judeo-Christian definition, I suppose, of faith. So where are you getting your definition of faith?
On Google.
Okay, interesting.
So
Yeah,
I
I've
can have
never.
faith in things or people without corresponding to belief, and I can believe in things that I don't have faith in. See that? There's a difference in the two.
I can't think of an example. Could you provide an example?
Let me just let's see. That's good. Okay.
Like, what could you have faith in that
Simple
you don't really
example.
believe? Like, if
Hey,
I say
real quick, I got to get going. Have a good day, guys. Thanks for
peace
the
pie,
conversation. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
dude, it was
Yeah,
so good. Thank you so much for
yeah, it
entertaining me, bro.
was really interesting. Okay,
I hope you have
peace.
a wonderful day, bro. We'll
Yeah,
talk
you
again
too.
soon.
Yeah, have a good night, both of you guys.
You too. You too. Peace.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna end
So
it somewhat soon here too, JD, but we'll keep going here for a bit.
yeah, I gotta drop something too. So the example that I can give you says, so looking at a chair and believing that it will hold me, that would be a belief. But faith, on the other hand, is complete trust and confidence in something, someone or something. So the chair, that it's not a belief that it will hold you, but you just know it, and then you're gonna go ahead and sit in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
so
it's
that's I thought more how I was using it, because didn't you say that faith was like about an open-mindedness?
without any preconceptions, going into the unknown, right? With trust. It requires trust, right? Faith requires trust in oneself or whatever this other thing is. And I know it's closely concept is related to like the religious perspective, but it's not. Because science does the same thing. Science.
Oh yeah, I see that connection. We don't have to use it religiously, but I still am confused about like I would agree with your example. That example is great. So now we have that example to work off of. You agree with the example too, right?
Which one?
Of the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then we're on terms. We're fine. We're fine with the faith term. I agree with you for the most part. Yeah,
Yeah. So
100%.
it says faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Belief clings, but faith let goes. Right?
Yeah, so you're not. First of all, you're not saying that the chair can't break regardless of our faith or belief, right? Like just because you have faith that the chair won't break when you sit in it doesn't mean it won't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
totally. Okay, so that's the first thing, and then but the second thing is, could
Belief is that
someone?
it holds you, but then it breaks, then your belief is also sort of shattered, right? Or sort of
That's
shaken.
right. That's right. That's right. But my next question is, could someone have faith in the thing holding them without understanding it's a chair kind of thing? Like, is there some relation there? Maybe I could provide a better example, not the chair, but like if someone completely unbeknownst had no idea what chairs even were, walked up to the thing and just could they still have faith about it holding them? Is that,
Absolutely.
yeah, I agree. Okay.
And then
Yeah,
if it breaks,
we agree.
it won't shatter their faith because it was whatever the truth comes, whether it's the chair that's faulty, that they will accept that as a truth. The faith is not shaken. It frees you from doubt, technically, right? It's very powerful if you think about it.
Wait. Say that again. Say that. I think I missed what you meant by that. Say that again.
So so like when you walk in faith, and I'm gonna use science because that's what closely resonates with modern day people. But so when science says we want to test this hypothesis or whatever, right? They might have some kind of preconceptions, but if they don't, the whole idea of the experiment is whatever we find, we will see that as truth, right? Because this is what we have faith. Even the scientist doing the test has to have a level of faith within himself that what he's seeing is the truth, right? So faith in oneself is key, right? For example, how do you know your legs are not going to fall off? You have There's a level of faith, the energy of faith that's in you that can say, oh well, I just get up and I'm going to walk and I won't fall, right? That's faith, right? Walking in trust, walking in just being, that your legs will not fall off, right? That's You have that faith in you. Okay, so when you ask for a belief, for example, like if I fall off of this, your belief would be like, oh, my legs are not gonna fall, but then you get a crank and then the whole world breaks, right? Like, why did this happen? Who did this happen with? Why this and that, right? All kinds of doubts will arise. But in faith, you will just know that this was an incident, right? And that's just sort of part of that walking into the unknown kind of a scenario. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I'm trying to find the right words here to put this in context.
No, I totally, yeah, I totally agree. I think for the most part, the problem I'm having is that I see faith and logic as like, so like, are we saying that? Are you trying to say that faith and logic are juxtaposed or the same? They're the same thing.
Well, logic, I don't know which logic you're talking about because there's so many different kinds of logics. I don't know. Do you have a predefined definition or a way of like this process of logic that you're talking about?
Yeah, I guess it was more related to what I said earlier about like the strict rules of syntax, governing validity, that kind of thing.
Well, that's all bias at the end of the day. I mean, everything is
I
bias.
know, I know. So that's what interests me about it so much because like that's what it isn't. That's why it interests me so much, bro, because we have to chill here for a second. Like if you look at the syntax closely, right, of what a like modus ponens, for example, demands. It demands it demands non-bias. The same way I was giving the example of drawing the map. Remember how we drew the map? What is right, right. So we're leveraging our bias to draw the map, but it's not bias.
It is, isn't it? What makes you say it's not bias?
Because of the fact that we're highlighting the bias and leveraging it right towards whatever means we want. We could replace it with a different metric.
But
The
that's just
bias
making stuff up, dude.
bias can be but okay, so the bias can be leveraged non-dogmatically, right? Bias dogma is bad, but trudging forward with my dogma is bad. But choosing a metric, like if you and I have to build a house, we could debate all day whether to use inches or centimeters, right? But like there's no right answer, and at the end of the day, we just have to choose a bias
Right.
system to measure the house and build the house.
That's true. Yep. We have to
Right.
pick something. Right.
And if we other each other culturally because I used inches my whole life and you use centimeters, and now I just hate you because of that, that's irrationality. It's like rationality gives us the tools to compare both systems, metric or imperial, against just convert. We can just, right? At the end of the day, it's a laughable disagreement to have because whether you use inches or I use centimeters, we'll convert them at the end of the day and the house will still get built. There's a conversion, and that's logic.
There's a collaboration. Absolutely. I think logic can help you say, okay, well, you look at it this way, I look at it this way. It's kind of like the same thing. Logically, it makes sense. So let's just go ahead and pick this thing, call it whatever you want to call it. We still build it.
Yeah, but it's not quite that. It's a strict rule of conversion. It's not quite, oh, we can do whatever we want, right? It's like if you stick to your strict guidelines and I stick to mine, we can convert these. Like metric and imperial system can be convert. They can't ever collaborate really though, right? We can't actually use in the same system these two. We have to merge our units at one point to get an answer. If I said
Yeah.
if you said how tall is the building and I said, you know, now I say in meters, well, we didn't even agree on that. We said we wanted in inches, right? So like there's this whole other problem of how we
Yeah.
are going to decide the bias. That's the whole disillusion here that I'm trying to maybe draw down with belief and faith and everything, because we agreed on a lot of that terminology. It's just that when we communicate, there are strict rules governing how we, right, through a virtuous manner, are able to actually understand each other. And that syntax, that rational syntax, is what helps us. Like,
What
I
is that
think,
exactly?
pardon me.
What is that exactly?
Well, you gotta look up like inference rules. Like, I don't really like. There's tons of. I think there's like
Sounds like
14.
another bias to me, dude. I'm not trying to totally obliterate this, but at the end of the day, I think we're running away from the truth, right? If it is a bias, it's okay, right? It's not a problem if it's a
So
bias.
okay,
Because it's
okay,
an
okay,
easily
okay.
agreed upon approach to
So if I give
making
you a
things.
coding language, right, and you can build anything you want, a video game, a website, anything you want with this coding language, but I tell you, but you got to use this coding language. Like if you break the syntax, the code won't run and the computer won't work. Is that a sense of bias?
No, those are just constraints. It's an approach. I mean, it's a preference. I guess it's a bias. It just all sort of similar words play here, but it's a preference of using a particular framework, a particular type of language code, right? And through that, you're going to build something. Okay, well, there's some constraints that come with that sort of approach, right? That method of building anything. So then that's true for everything else as well. Any kind of approach, any kind of a process that we put in place, any kind of logic that we put play in, right? It all sort of falls into the same, um, what's the right word here? Same sort of constraints and possibilities, I guess, both in that essence. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just about noticing what the constraints are. So when we talk about logic, we're talking about why are we sticking to logic, and why do we appreciate the constraints logic provides us
There
with?
you go. I like that question. I think that's a much more sound question because it puts things, at least in my mind, my bias here, in perspective for me. Thank you.
Um, yeah, so like that's what I'm trying to draw attention to. Like these strict inference rules have utility. It's not a bias. The reason we use them is because they're so unbiased.
No, see, then you fall back into the same trap again. By calling it unbiased, you have said, now you're calling something else wrong. So that's just ignorance at that point of view, right? Because
But
you're ignoring
it's
the
not
other.
about, again, it's not about wrong or right. Remember we talked about the imperial or metric system. Neither of them are wrong or right. They're just different systems that apply to length. So
Exactly.
logic gives us the tool. So, but that's why I'm saying the syntax, the restraints and conditions of syntax that are related to logic are by definition not biased, because what they do is they give us the tools to compare biases. That's the very thing it does. When you're a biased human operating in mere language and your mere inductive reasoning, logic is the pure tool to provide you with the right with this metric system, this system to compare
How do
your
you compare
inferences against
bias?
someone else's.
How do you compare biases when you already know that there's bias in both ends?
Well, that ironically, I believe that's where the actual truth derives from, comparing biases.
But that's just a flawed sort of
I
approach
know
to
it seems
it.
flawed,
Totally
but that's the
flawed.
only way we can get to it.
Now that we
There's
talk
that
about it.
there's no the only problem is I agree with you, bro, but the only problem is there's no other way to get to it.
So okay, here's the thing, right? I think logic I see now, at least that I'm saying, it's a belief saying that this is the way it should be, whereas faith
Not
is
quite.
openness. Faith would be like, well, however it is, I'm going to try to work with it, right?
I
So
like where you're going with faith. I like where you're going with faith, but I would still say logic's more of like a method. It's a
right,
method. It's a method of validity, right? Strict
that
form
this
of
will work.
validity.
It's a belief. I mean,
Well,
I'm
no,
using
because I don't have to
words
believe in anything to use logic. I don't have to believe in anything.
You are believing in the logic itself that this is the method you're choosing by preference, that this will be the right one. That's a belief.
But it's more of a method than a belief because I'm not holding any belief. I'm just holding into a method, a standard for basically what you said, back to faith. It's more like operating in a scenario that I don't know, trudging forward into the darkness. Like that's what I would use logic for, and faith.
And then you, so then what happens when your expectations, your way of looking at this reality doesn't add up with somebody else's reality? What happens then? How do you
That's the
apply
perfect time. That's the perfect time to use logic.
So
That's
what do you do at that point? Yeah.
Well,
How do
that's
you go through
exactly
that?
me showing up with my tape measure of inches and you showing up with your tape measure of centimeters. I would know right away how to resolve it. First of all, if you are completely inept and don't understand that these things can be converted, I will just laugh silently to myself about your ignorance, and then I will convert my system to yours immediately.
Interesting. What if you're wrong and this is not how the other person uses this measurement system at all? What
I
if there's a
don't
complete
know
different?
then. I don't know what you mean then. That's a different question.
So this is again, I'm purposely going a little bit deeper, and I know this could sort of rattle most people but I'm glad you're still open to having this conversation because it's the detailed level, the deeper level that helps us see that no matter what we do, we have to pick something at the end of the day, right? Because so for example, you can use inches for it's the same. You can convert it into centimeters. Yes, you know that. Well, let's assume that other person doesn't know that. They use that tape or inch tape for centimeters, and they use it for I don't know. Let's just say fishing. Okay, that's their whole thing about that thing. You're gonna laugh because you think, in your view, that this is not what it's used for. It's not used for fishing. But he's gonna laugh too. He's gonna say, "What the hell is this guy
You're
doing?
saying, okay,
He's
you're
using
trying to say
for
he's
this, right?" So
using the tape measure not to measure length, but he's like using it in some crazy way to fish with it.
right, because of
I
his
got you.
understanding of what that
I
tool
got
is.
you. Yeah, I got you.
Okay, so then are you guys both right or are you guys both wrong?
Yeah, like again, like
Or how
so
does logic play into
what
that?
well like what again if we were to compare the utility of the two usage of the tool, again, logic would just be the method. I could compare them. Logic
Right.
doesn't get us. My point is the misunderstanding of logic is that most people think it gets us to some conclusion about the truth when it doesn't. It's a lot similar to faith, whereas it's more like a method for comparing different assumptions.
So then how would you navigate through this situation where the guy is actually like, hey, this is for my fishing, I use this, I'm gonna go to the river and
I
get
would
some
be,
fish,
if he was
'cause I catch a
catching
lot of
fish,
with it.
bro, if he was catching fish with it, I would be enamored. If he actually managed to use a tape measure, I would laugh at myself. I would say the exact sentence you said. This whole time I thought tape measures were good for measuring things, and here this guy is catching our dinner. I would be
So then what
enamored,
is-
and I would want him to teach me, and I would, forever be grateful for learning how to turn a tape measure into a fishing rod. That's an amazing thing.
Okay, cool. So you're
But
open
that's
to
logic.
it.
That's what
Yeah.
would be an example of irrationality would me be pouting on the beach and talking shit on him while he doesn't because he doesn't use the tape measure for measuring things. Oh, and then eating the fish that he brings and provides to the camp and then continuing to talk shit and never appreciating what he's done. That would be irrational, right? And trudging forward dogmatically thinking this guy's an idiot. Tape measures are for measuring things. That's irrational.
Exactly, right? Because they fail to see that that is also a possibility, and it's happening in front of them. If he's bringing back fish and feeding him, and he still wants to not acknowledge that this is not tape measure could be used for, then he's not accepting the truth.
Now, notice the constraints, and you just said it. If he's bringing back fish, then, right? But notice that constraint, because, and that's a really important one to make. Because if this freaking guy takes my freaking tape measure every day, insists he's going to go fish with it, right? Never catches a goddamn fish, and every day brings back my rusty brand new tape measure, right? I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to eventually be like, bro, you're not catching any fish. This is the worst idea. No one's ever made a fucking fishing rod out of a tape measure. Please stop ruining my shit, right? It's a whole different constraint on the argument now. Now my rationality is leading me towards not letting this guy touch my shit.
Exactly. So that would be rational and logical for because you have opened up and now you're seeing the results. That's not what the thing is said. So you have to try something different now, right? You actually use it for measurement and not for fishing. That makes sense.
Yeah,
'Cause
and it's this like tool. The logic is this tool for like applying these if constraints on possible outcomes. Like if he goes and catches fish, I'm gonna be impressed. If he keeps ruining consistently my tape measure and never catches a goddamn thing, I'm gonna be pissed. So it gives the two possible worlds a rational outcome, but it doesn't commit me necessarily to either one or like just one. It's that comparison that is the key, right? Like, and I mean, you could draw it further because I think that that's a pretty limited way of looking at it. Like deeper down, logic demands us to be tentative. Like I think the best outcome of that would be if I was dealing with some apprentice that never, I'll lend him my old shitty tape measure and he can try to fish with it. If he wants to spend a year trying to fish with it, if it's not on my dollar, not on my watch, I really don't care. Good for him. Even if he fails over and over again, there's still that possibility that, right, he could catch a big fish with it. Who knows? But so that's still there. That's that constraint. It has to be a loose enough. Logic gives you a loose enough tool that no assertions ever more than really some assumption. You can't get to certainty. It demands to be tentative.
to be open-minded initially, right? Till you can close the gaps, I guess would be another word to look at it.
Yeah, it's the tentative nature of the syntax. Like, there's no way to hit certainty using logic.
Yeah. That makes sense.
The syntax demands conditionality. Like, that's like saying, I can draw a perfect map of the coastline. Like, what do you mean? You could zoom in or out of the coastline and make it as detailed or as generalized as you want. Like, there's no true map of the coastline. Think about the coastline, the waves coming in and out every day. Like, if you had to measure the coastline, it'd be impossible. It's a constantly moving, fluctuating thing across the whole landscape of the globe.
Mm-hmm.
But we generalize, right, within a certain limit. We generalize what the coastline is. We appreciate the generalizations because that's how we get around. If we didn't use a map and we were like, oh, this thing's biased, it's like, no, right? You can zoom in and out. It's like Google Maps. Zoom in to where you need to see. Zoom out as far as you want to see. Your scope is not biased. Imagine an old person opening Google Maps and just being like, oh, this only shows the picture where I'm at. Like, I want to see Europe. It's like, you can zoom out. You can zoom out.
Yeah, dude, that makes sense. I do have to drop. It was a good conversation, dude. Thank you for a good conversation. I'll talk to you later.
You as well, man. You're welcome anytime, and I'd love to talk to you again. Much love, JD. Have a good day, bro. I should probably go too. That was a long, productive, and entertaining live, and now everyone's gone. So much love to anyone else that I think is in here, but pretty much dead room now. So I'm going to end it with that.